to order tonight's Tuesday, December 1st study session for tonight's meeting. Could I have a roll call, please, Ruth Ann?
Member Carter?
Here.
Member Demmett?
Here.
Member Patton?
Here.
Member Pulaski?
Here.
Member Fisher is here. Vice President Exum?
Here.
President Hall?
Here. All people are present, so I will move on with the agenda. It does not look like we have any additions, corrections, or modifications for tonight's agenda. We do have a few citizen statements, and one of which is in person, so I'm going to let that person go first, and it might take, for those watching remotely, just take a minute of getting us set up, and then I'll continue with the written statements.
All right. Can I take my mask off, or do I need to leave it on? I can take it off. Hi, guys. How's everybody doing? Can you see me? Can everybody hear me okay? Stand back. Oh.
David Dutton is going to address us.
I send everybody, I'm David Dutton. I've taught in the district for 14 years. A number of you have been on the board the entire time I've been here. A number of you I've had your children in my class or worked with them. I know that you're going to make some decisions tonight concerning the return to school and attendance. And those are not easy decisions. And I don't envy the spot that you're in, given the current pandemic. I think, like everybody, I personally have wrestled with the idea of what's best for kids. And I would certainly have been on the side of, I think kids need to be in school because I know that it's the best environment for them, if at all possible. I felt that way until about 6 weeks ago. And then I felt the need I sent you all my statement, but I wanted to highlight and share a few thoughts with you in person. 6 weeks ago, I first got my test as being positive. I had a basic fever, and then I would teach till 1 o'clock and probably sleep the majority of the rest of the day. Food tasted like pure salt. I lost about 20 pounds. I worked on putting it back on, but just basically tired, persistent cough. I still, to this day, 6 weeks later, have a persistent cough. I still get tired when I do things. When I try to get back to working out and walking. And I was going to say, I will say, I made the decision that I'm not messing around with it. And I want to thank you for the change in our insurance, because it's going to be a $50 copay to go to Northwestern and meet with a cardiologist, because I've read too many things and I still don't feel like myself that I'm not messing around. The hard part of this discussion is my father wasn't as fortunate. My mother dropped him off. We had been working to get ready to go duck hunting this fall. My oldest son had the discussions of, I really want to go this fall with everybody because I don't know how many more. How many more years Grandpa can do it? So Dad and I were in the process of getting things ready. Unbeknownst to us, I don't know if it was me or him, but one of us in a trip back and forth, obviously we're already infected. We both found out that we were positive on the same day. And he had similar symptoms. Over the course of a week, he got worse. He went to the hospital on a Friday and had various complications from he ended up having a stroke to finally, when they decided to try the last resort of, he couldn't breathe and his heart was having problems and needed to be on a ventilator. He went into cardiac arrest and died. I don't share that because I necessarily want sympathy or anything to that effect. But what I want to share is that, it's a very devastating experience, and our family got together You know, I have 3 siblings, grandkids, and, you know, very small funeral because as I told Mom, I don't want anybody else to have to experience what we did. Okay, so 27 of us total gathered for a funeral. I mean, 2 of us, my mother and myself, both had already gotten past the point of being contagious per the Department of Public Health. And within the course of a week of the 25 of us, the other 25 being together, 5 positive tests came out of that group. And 3 weeks later, I mean, granted that we're all over the Midwest, but it's since within another week, I think it was the 7, and I think maybe now it's at 9 of the people. This thing is, I can tell you from my own experience, it's not the flu. I wish it was the flu. I mean, I felt sicker, but not for a continued period. And I wouldn't want anybody to have to go through, you know, the things I've gone through. You know, I think the thing we need to consider, while I agree, I mean, we have the same concerns about, you know, the difficulties of virtual learning and kids struggling. Isolation, food insecurity, depression are all very real. But I think we also need to remember that 70% of our population is low income. A large majority of our population is international. And the things that make Urbana the place that we all love to call home are also things that make our population an extremely high risk group for spreading this virus. I mean, the people, you know, the individuals are working at service jobs and points of contact. I could give you a quick math lesson, but my thought process is if I'm meeting with 20 kids a day, they go home and I'll conservatively say there's 4 people in their household, that's 80 contacts. Where are those 80 people going in a day? My experience is you can't control it. It's not a matter of if, in my opinion, it's a matter of when. Just some thoughts, and I don't say this to be flippant, but I just kind of looked up a few things. You know, about 250 people have died from this virus in less than a year. 38,000 people die every year from gun violence, and half of those deaths are from suicide. And I think I saw in the last 10 years in school shootings, less than 500 students. And I don't say that to be, like I said, flippant. It's just the amount of money and effort we put in to try and prevent those things from happening, and something we might have a little control over. I think it's something to consider. Now, you know, again, back to the idea of you know, the failure. Am my time up? All right. So anyway, you know my number. You know where I'm at. If you've got any more questions or concerns, you know, please contact me. I'd be happy to answer them. And thank you for your service and time.
Thank you, Mr. Dutton.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Dutton. Okay, I will read the first of our 3rd written communications. Okay. This first one came from,
And
oh, sorry, yes,
hold on just a second.
you bet.
We had another in-person
Oh, sure, no problem.
who is being ushered in right now.
All righty then, I will put that on hold, thanks.
This is going to be Drake Mateer. Drake Mateer.
Right there.
Right.
Yep.
How long do I have? How long do I have?
You have 5 minutes.
Can I take the mask off?
Yep.
Hello, everyone. My name is Drake Mateer. I'm a student at the university, majoring in community health with a concentration in health education. But most importantly, I'm the senior project manager of Natural Guide Nutrition Incorporated, community health organization situated out of Chicago. The reason why I bring this up is because we understand that we are in the middle of a public health crisis. So the idea of bringing students back to school especially when the numbers, I was just looking at some of the numbers on the news, and they were saying that in March, we saw only like around 100,000 people infected with COVID. And we see in the month of November alone, we see up to a couple and a few million individuals infected with COVID. I think I really want to come into question the students. There was an article on the Illinois Newsroom talking about what is wrong with Urbana school districts. And the plan that was brought into action was the idea to bring back vulnerable populations. We know vulnerable populations are those Black and brown students. But here's the question: vulnerable in what way? You're attacking individuals in both ways. Vulnerable, saying that they're vulnerable because they're so absent from school, in a school that only teaches a Eurocentric background, a school that does not actively educate Blackness and educate on racism, that does not include Black and brown students. You're going to say, because you are absent in these areas, vulnerable, you're going to bring them to school vulnerable, you're going to infect them vulnerable, take it back to those grandparents, those aunties and uncles vulnerable. Who are these vulnerable people you're talking about? And we see what you're talking about. We see what you're doing. My mother is the executive director of Naturopath Nutrition Incorporated. She's doing e-learning right now. And she has some of the same issues that are some of the things that are being discussed right now regarding some absenteeism going on. But she has one student that shows up to her class alone more than other ones, and it's one-on-one instruction. So the question is, why? It's not about why they're absent, and so we got to bring them into schools. The question is, what's wrong with the education? What's wrong with the curriculum? What's wrong with teaching? What's wrong with the teaching? It's not the students. Man in here just said that there are so many issues that have arisen due to COVID: higher rates of food insecurity, domestic violence, loneliness. And we know that loneliness is one of the key factors for addiction, that leads to addiction. We understand that, but we have to create something different that keeps our quote unquote vulnerable students, our quote unquote vulnerable populations safe. How contradictory, how hypocritical, how you say vulnerable, but they're vulnerable to the pandemic. We know Black and brown people are disproportionately dying due to COVID. Will you play a part in that genocide? Will you play a part in elementary genocide? Because I still don't know if the contract with the SROs was canceled or not. So will you be part of the genocide due to the public health crisis for vulnerable populations? Or will you be a part of the elementary genocide where you feed into the school to prison pipeline? Or will you be a part of something that we, the people, can offer you? We've been out in the community, we've been out in the streets. We had Talking and Talking. We taking over next summer too. There needs to be a way that we can actively have community members out there, community organizations being for the students during the summertime, something that's gonna actively benefit them almost better than being in classrooms the regular time without the COVID pandemic. And have that be a part of their curriculum, have that be added to it. We are in trying times, we are in different times, and we have to try new things, not old things. It's time for new innovation. There's no more normal. There's no more normal. And as educators, as people who've been in school, been to college, we know that change is the only thing that's absolute. So because we are in changing times, we have to change our approach. First of all, let's change the language too. When we're talking about vulnerable populations, we're talking about health. When we're talking about vulnerable populations in terms of being absent from school, what's wrong with the school then? We already know that we have a pandemic. We already know that there's racism. We know that there's hatred, homophobia, transphobia. We know that. And we know that Black and brown students, Black and brown children have to deal with the stress and trauma more. I thank you all and really think about what you will do for the students, for the Black and brown students, and the organizations and the people that are willing to step in and help out, because we are here for the children the same way that you all are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matier.
Thank you. I don't think we have any more in-person comments. Nope. Okay. I will read the first of third written that was emailed to us. This first one comes from Melissa Littlefield. Dear Dr. Ivory Tatum and members of the USD School Board, first, thank you all for your continued work with all the families and children in our district. These are challenging times, and I know you're looking out for the best interests of the students. Having reviewed the plans for second semester hybrid instruction, I wanted to write in as a concerned parent of a UHS student. I understand that remote learning can be challenging for many of our students, but I also know that many students, my own included, are doing quite well with remote instruction. There is no one-size-fits-all model. That said, I would encourage you to maintain a robust remote option for the second semester for 3 reasons. 1, many families in our district include students, parents, siblings, guardians, or extended family members who are in the high-risk category for complications from COVID-19. I include teachers here as well. Remote learning that keeps our students in touch with their established teachers is the best and safest option for many of us. COVID-19 statistics have not improved. Indeed, they've worsened, and January is the middle of winter when we expect exponential growth in cases and hospitalizations. If we've been remote thus far, why return when the infection rate is getting worse? 2, continuity is key. So many students and teachers needed time to adjust to the remote learning technologies and schedule. It makes little sense to disrupt that during the second semester for hybrid learning that will place an amazing burden on our teachers and put them at greater risk. Moreover, a move to hybrid or in person for high school students could be doubly disastrous. They're in the middle of key and core classes that many of them need for graduation and college admissions. Changing their schedules and our expectations mid-year is likely to create more problems for those who are succeeding in one capacity or another. 3, we must protect our greatest resource, our teachers. Sending them back into school buildings is simply not safe, given that COVID-19 is an airborne disease. Teachers deserve the right to choose whether they want to risk in-person instruction. They should not be asked to compromise their health for the sake of their job, which is hard enough as it is. I'm sympathetic to those families and students who are struggling with remote instruction. This is a challenging year for so many of us, but it is just that, 1 year. And if we can keep more students, parents, teachers, and loved ones safe from the global pandemic, and we can through remote instruction, then that should be our top priority. Thank you for your time and effort. Signed, Melissa Littlefield, UHS parent. Okay. Our second letter for the evening is from Elizabeth Cheminsky. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Ms. Cheminsky. Please seriously consider a return to in-person learning for kindergarten-aged children. Virtual instruction and asynchronous learning is not working well for this age group. During kindergarten, 5- and 6-year-old children are learning to interact with each other, developing social control and autonomous learning habits, and most importantly, learning to read. The connection established between students and between students and the teacher is simply too difficult to do over Zoom. After 4 months of actively observing and supporting kindergarten instruction via Zoom, I can tell you this is not working well and our children are suffering. It saddens me every day when my 5-year-old tells me she does not like kindergarten on the computer, especially when she loved every minute at her previous preschool. She loves her teacher and wants so badly to physically be with her and her classmates, rather than just seeing them on a computer screen for 2.5 hours each morning. Please, Urbana School Board, send our kindergartners to their physical elementary school. Signed, Elizabeth Cheminsky, Yankee Ridge Kindergarten parent. And our last emailed letter for this evening. Wait a minute, I think I got myself reversed here. I'm sorry, hold on a second. Okay, excuse me. This should have been read first. This was received first from Leslie Sherman. Dear school board members, I'm the parent of a 6th grader at UMS and an 11th grader at UHS. I've reviewed the e-learning plan document and am requesting that the board members and central office staff consider and update the plan based upon 2 points I've detailed below. 1, The plan does not address how those with 504 plans will be addressed under the section related to supporting children with special needs. Can this be further clarified in the document? 2, I have serious concerns with allowing teachers to use whichever format they want to notify students of assignments. My middle schooler and high schooler have found it very challenging to track assignments when teachers have not used Google Classroom to assign assignments. If done correctly, the assignments will show up in the student's to-do list, and it makes it easier for them to track. My 11th grader's English teacher is using an odd slide to give assignments and provide links instead of using Clever or Google Classroom. The slide is very busy and hard to track changes when new things are assigned, and I'm very concerned that it's not digitally accessible. Also, long-term assignments should be assigned in Google Classroom as soon as it is assigned with a due date so that the student sees it. Assigning it a day or two before it's due is not helping students plan their work. This last-minute way of assigning things has frustrated my 11th grader quite a bit. Remote learning and e-learning can be challenging for families and children of all ages to juggle and balance. Leveraging the technology tools consistently across classes for a child can make a huge difference. While I don't want to restrict teachers in their options, I do want it to be easier for my children to see assignments and track them. Consistently using Google Classroom assignment methods for all classes can greatly increase the ease of tracking assignments and reduce the stress on the students. 3, I've noticed that some teachers have a setting in their Google Classrooms which shares information about assignments to parents via a weekly email. My 6th grader percussion and band classes are set up this way. This has been very helpful for me as a parent to discuss assignments with my child and to track when assignments are missing. Please request teachers set up their Google Classrooms to support this feature. Please consider this feedback and update your e-learning plan accordingly. Thank you, signed, Leslie Sherman. And I think that's all for our public comments. So I'm toggling back and forth between different documents, so bear with me. That was the last of our citizen statements. So we're moving on to 5.0 on the agenda, which is a call for an executive session tonight after this current public meeting. The call is for the purpose of the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the district, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired. And for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity. So that will be tonight after this current session finishes. And I believe there will be no action following the executive session. All right, so now we just need an approval for tonight's agenda. Do I have, okay.
Second.
Moved by John, seconded by Peggy. Could I have a roll call, please?
Member Carter,
Second. Yes.
Member Demmett,
Yes.
Member Patton,
Yes.
Member Pulaski,
Yes.
Member Fisher votes yes, Vice President Exum,
Yes.
and President Hall.
Yes, agenda is approved. So we're going to move into our first of the administrative reports, which is the e-learning plan for the first review. It's going to be brought to us by Kim Norton. Would you take it away, Kim?
So we discussed the e-learning plans just a little bit recently when we were talking about snow days. Kim is going to be convening the calendar committee very soon. And so this is a portion of that further discussion related to if we have an approved 3-year e-learning plan, then we can for the future no longer have to include snow days in our calendar. So Kim is going to walk us through our first review of that.
Okay, so this is our e-learning plan, and we're going to be reviewing this tonight as a first reading. It has several Illinois school code requirements and then our district plan response to each one of those. And this plan does require a public hearing and notification to stakeholders, which we will post December 4th prior to our next meeting on December 15th. E-learning days, I do want to point out that those are different from remote learning, what we're currently doing now. These days are intended to be used for emergency days or for severe weather once we resume in-person learning. once approved by the board and by the ROE, this plan is valid for 3 years. All of the steps that are included in this plan are now completed due to our current model of instruction. For example, distribution of devices have been provided to teachers and families. New software is used and noted in our plan, along with the many platforms that we utilize to communicate with families. This plan also outlines the 5 hours of instruction per day, the 2.5 hours live synchronous, and then the 2.5 hours of asynchronous that students and families can complete on their own time each day. Overall, we're in a really good place now to use e-learning days as we've implemented remote learning all this school year. If we would experience inclement weather or an emergency that would have normally prompted us to close school, we would not need to do so. And again, this would be once we resume in-person instruction, and we wouldn't have to utilize that snow day. And again, once this plan is approved by the board and the ROE, it's valid for 3 years. Any questions? I'll kind of scroll through here. And again, it just points out that we have to provide notice of that public hearing, and then that teachers have laptops, and that we have specific software that we're utilizing, as well as those synchronous times. We would keep those in the event that we would have a snow day down the road after we have in-person instruction. It includes the modes of communication that we have, the many different modes that we have, remote learning plans or e-learning plans for students with special needs. Dual language and ESL have been involved in this planning, and this is a pre-K-12 plan. And then we'll continue to review this each year as part of our continuous school improvement.
Kim, I have a quick question just for background for people who are interested. This is done with advice, with guidance from ISB, you said, correct?
From ISB and the Regional Office of Education. Prior to the pandemic, there were very few districts that had an e-learning plan. Gibson City was one of those that utilized it, just because not all districts were equipped to do so at that time. The pandemic quickly put us, we flipped on a dime quickly so that we would be able to do this. So now there really is not a need to use a snow day because we have the tools to be able to do that from home.
So in terms of e-learning, if we're eliminating snow days in essence, the Chromebooks and things that students who needed them, they received them because of the pandemic, would they then in theory be hanging on to those? Because if there were a tip in it, without e-learning, if there's a snow day, kids don't know there's going to be a snow day necessarily the night before when they're in person, and they don't know to gather all of their materials with them to take home in case they'd need them. So in this case, they would already have the Chromebooks and all the equipment that they would need, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Other questions?
John, you're muted.
Sorry. To any of the constructive criticism that we received tonight in the one email, do they apply to this plan or to our remote learning plan? I was trying to follow Ann and I followed some of the critiques, but when you read it, but I didn't get it in writing, so it was difficult to those were pretty detailed comments. And
That's why I really wanted to clarify this, because sometimes when we have virtual learning, remote learning, e-learning, there's a lot of different terms that are used and that can be confusing. And listening to that statement, I felt that that was being applied to what's going on right now with remote learning, where e-learning would be when we would need to use a day due to an emergency or inclement weather.
okay. And since this is pre-K through 12, Anne raises a considerable point about proper equipment at home. Is this a backdoor way of obligating us to purchasing devices for every student, every student new to the district every year, that the plan is in place?
I'll look through here on the plan. We do have, if for some reason, even if it was, internet connection was not working, we would have the ability that students could complete asynchronous work and still receive attendance for that school day. If there was a glitch or students didn't have a device or they couldn't get connected. There's actually one district not too far from us that did have a Learn Anywhere day prior to the pandemic, and they counted it as a school day and they did not use devices to do so.
All right.
But we would make every attempt to make sure our students had what they need, but we would not count it against them if they were not able to connect.
If it's appropriate for us to purchase, that's fine. We just need to budget for it if that's the case. And I just wanted to make sure that we weren't having an unintended consequence.
Do other board members have questions or comments they'd like to discuss? I know this is a first read, but if anything's popping out to you, go right ahead.
No, I mean, it helped that Kim explained. I was thinking of it as a remote learning plan, so I now understand the distinction. So it kind of took care of all my questions.
Well,
I get,
go ahead.
sorry,
Ann.
go ahead.
No,
Go ahead, please.
I know they call it an e-learning plan, so it automatically makes you think of virtual learning, but there are a lot of districts that are still doing this using paper packets as well. So paper is an option that we could use as well. Go ahead, Ann.
Oh, I was trying to scroll through the material to see if I could find it, but this plan wouldn't, when would it go into effect? When we leave the pandemic? Or I didn't see that on there. Or when we're back in person?
It would go into effect. I mean, it's valid for 3 years once both the board and the regional office approved this plan, but we wouldn't need to utilize an e-learning day until we were present.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then also, I was just looking at the beginning, which was the collective bargaining unit, the questions about the teachers, since we've just signed our contract. Let's say we ratify this with the ROE. I don't know what the ROE's timeline is. I mean, they may take, just a couple weeks to do it, or it may take more than a month or whatever, but let's just say we finalize this before the end of second semester. Is this going to need to be added on as an addendum to any agreements we have with our teachers, or how does that work?
No, I don't believe so, because we already have these pieces in place.
Okay.
What we would do is, even with that synchronous time, we would just use that same structure and then roll right into that if we would need to take an e-learning day.
I think this might strike fear into the hearts of children everywhere if they know that snow days might be eliminated forever, or at least for the foreseeable future if this goes well. So it's good for us, though. Any other questions? Okay, so you're going to bring this back, Kim, for the next meeting for the public hearing will start in which time people can make comments about it, and then we will discuss it again on the 15th. But are we taking action on the 15th?
Yes.
All right, just want everybody to be aware of that. That's what you'd said. And then hopefully if the public has questions or things, they can submit them to us in that time frame. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, get my agenda back here. Okay, our second study topic for this evening is 10.2. Dr. Ivory Tatum is going to discuss the proposal to establish a district-wide equity task force.
Well, you skipped.
Actually, yeah, we're doing the third quarter learning, the second semester
Oh.
plans first.
Did I skip way ahead on this thing?
Yep, we're on 10.1.
I'm sorry. Okay, 10.1. I skipped over a whole bunch of agenda stuff. My computer glitched. Sorry. First off, we don't have any policy reviews for tonight, and we don't have any action items. That's what also threw me for 8.0 and 9.0. So we're skipping over them. And now we're going on to 10.0. Thank you, Jennifer, for clarifying. Second semester, third quarter learning plans.
Okay, and I have some guests that are going to join me here. So we have administrators who are going to jump into this conversation. I'm sharing my screen. Can everybody see that? Can you see that, Kim? Yes. Okay. So we have from early childhood, Principal Beth Ladd joining us, from Urbana Middle School, Dr. Joe Wiemelt, and from Urbana High School, Mr. Travis Corson. I'm going to start us off here a little bit. I know we've received some questions as to why we aren't presenting all of the plans this evening. You know, we've been working really closely at all levels. The elementary committee and the elementary group is quite large, and we have many decisions yet still to make here in the next week or two. We also need to engage our families and get a little more information from them in the next week or so. And principals will be meeting with elementary staff Monday, December 7th at their faculty meetings. So the elementary group really does need a little more time to fine tune and bring together a comprehensive plan to the board and to families. So they will be presenting at the next meeting on December 15th. The early childhood team, middle school and high school teams have been working just as hard as elementary, and their plans were ready to go. So we felt like it was just more prudent to go ahead and present these plans so they can start contacting families and reaching out to families and engaging students around their intent to return or to remain remote. We also have some targeted students that we need to reach out to, which will require a lot of phone calls and follow-ups. So we really wanted to allow early childhood, middle school, and high school to get the ball rolling here. So I hope that answers some of the questions we've received around elementary. Don't worry, we are bringing the elementary plans. We're still hard at work, and we have a lot of good information to share at our meeting on December 15th. So elementary families, tune in then. I'm going to go ahead. You're kind of going to hear from me here at the beginning, and then I'm going to turn it over to our building administrators. So why are we having this discussion now? I know we heard a couple of really passionate public comments in the boardroom a few minutes ago. We've been talking a lot about the needs of our students, and we know as a group, we've had discussions here that some of our students, and as well as a couple of comments we heard in the written comments as well. Some of our students are thriving with remote learning, and it's working well for a large number of our students. However, for a smaller group of our students, especially our younger children, they need more face-to-face and they need more engagement. We believe our younger students will learn better physically in the classroom, and we believe the best way to address some of the social emotional well-being of our younger students is in person. So we'll talk about that a little bit more when we have the elementary people come forward, but again, this also impacts early childhood as well as, you know, at the middle school. They've been having a lot of really high level, high quality conversations about SEL and social emotional learning. So we feel like getting some of those students back in the building is what we need to do. So I know some of our people who have been here tonight have already talked about some of our case numbers. I know many of you follow those numbers as well. I follow them too. I did just want to remind everyone that we're looking at those weekly test positivities and daily test positivity rates. Right now, our goal would be to, in order to bring students back, is to kind of stay in that moderate level. So right now we have seen some spikes, as we know. We've been following that. We will maybe see a few more spikes here following the Thanksgiving holiday. The numbers were dipping a little bit after the recent Tier 3 mitigations from the governor. And we expect that we may see some additional spikes as well. But we've talked about this here. We talked about it at our last meeting when Ms. Franklin shared that based on the schools around us and based on a lot of the national data, schools have not been seen to be super spreaders. And we really feel like with our protocols for cleaning and sanitizing and social distancing and mask wearing, that we'll be able to bring students back safely. However, that being said, we really do want our positivity rates to fall in those between that 5 and 8. Right now, we are kind of hinging in Champaign County at around that 6.5 rate. We'll see where we are in the weeks to come. But right now, our goal is to get students back and get them back in a very safe manner. So I just wanted to also kind of quote a little of the CDC language. This is directly from operating schools during COVID. So our plan that we're going to talk about here today and on the 15th would fall into the some risk category, not the high risk category. We would be looking at a hybrid learning model where some students participate in virtual learning, other students participate in person. We realize and recognize that many of our families will want to continue to remain remote, and we are going to build models that will sustain that for families who are not interested in sending their students back in person right now. Our plan is to have small in-person classes at all levels, alternating schedules, making sure that we are not mixing groups of students and teachers across the day, not sharing objects and materials, and making sure that we're putting in good practices for social distancing, hand hygiene, and face masks. We've already shared here before our cleaning protocols and disinfecting and sanitizing protocols, but we'll republish those again in January when we put out the full plans. So just some of our shared values. We've had, as Kim mentioned, we've had lots of conversations with our teachers in our committees. As we've talked about remote learning, we've worked really closely with our UEA leadership, and we all agree that there's some shared values related to why it is also important for our students to get a high quality and equal access to education. We know that all of our students don't learn at the same rates. Everyone has varying learning styles, which we've seen. Again, we've seen some students, and we've heard lots of stories of quite a few kids who are doing okay with remote learning, but we know that there are many, many who are not. We've also learned that the use of current technology is essential to education, especially in this plan that we're currently implementing, and we must find creative ways to support our students not demonstrating success with remote learning. We're on the same team and we have the same goals, and that is to improve student learning. So our recommendation at this time is to return to a partial in-person learning for some students, primarily at the elementary level. So we will be talking more about the elementary plan. At the middle school and high school, you're going to hear tonight that we will keep the majority of the students remote and invite in those students who need to be in school in person the most. Should our county metrics necessitate a need to change our plans and reevaluate in-person learning, we will pivot back to remote learning immediately. So this is just review. We've talked about these things, but I just kind of want to say them again, just you know, anytime we have these conversations, I just want to make sure that we're remembering that any plans that we're bringing forward align with the guidelines for the Illinois State Board of Education, the Centers for Disease Control, Illinois Department of Public Health, and the Champaign-Urbana Public Health District. The framework for all plans were developed collaboratively with teachers, union leaders, and our administrators working very closely together. All plans have built-in flexibility, including a 100% remote learning option. So I can't stress that enough for our families who are still deciding whether they want to return in person or not. We've talked a lot about the synchronous learning piece, and again, we have some core ideas that we have to implement per ISB guidelines. So we're required to provide 2.5 hours of synchronous teaching and learning for both the in-person students in the hybrid plan, as well as any students that would be remote. So you'll see that as we look at the schedules coming up here in a few minutes. Per Illinois State Board of Education guidelines, we are also required to provide both in-person and remote-only options of asynchronous learning. And we've talked about these things, but I'm going to just read the bullets real quick. Some in-person learning for our younger students is better than none. Brain research tells us that our younger children especially do not learn effectively on a device. I know our early childhood people are firm believers in that. Our most vulnerable students may need more time than others for in-person learning. The majority of our older students are managing remote learning better than our younger students. Our older students not engaging in remote learning need more one-on-one support, more intentional content-based instruction, and more face-to-face interaction with their teachers. So you're going to see that tonight in the middle school and high school plans as the administrators share. I talked about these protocols, but every time I put a plan in front of you, I just have to say them again, just to make sure. We can't say them enough. So face masks must be worn at all times in the school and on our buses. We are also maintaining a social distance of 6 feet at all times in classrooms, labs, hallways, basically everywhere. Students must self-certify daily. Temperature checks will be done at the schools. All meals and food will be eaten in large common areas or taken home as grab-and-go meals. All schools and classrooms will be deep cleaned and sanitized every night. We also have a self-screening protocol. Parents will sign a consent form agreeing to the district's expectations for in-person learning. All of these safety protocols were also put in place for the learning labs. So this isn't something new. So any of our students who came to the learning labs or were in the K-1-2 classrooms that we implemented, the smaller group settings, all of our families, these were the same expectations, and we would continue these expectations for any students returning in person in January. The parents sign a consent form. They complete a daily screener before sending their student to school on the bus or drop-off, car ride, or walker. Parents will initial the self-screener daily. Staff will check the self-screening form when the students arrive at school. We will also do a secondary temperature check at the site. And parents consenting to in-person will be expected to pick up their students immediately if symptoms arise during the day. That's one of the very specific questions that parents have to agree to on the consent form. If you're agreeing to send your student back to school in person, if you get a phone call during the day saying your student is exhibiting any of the COVID-like symptoms, then we are expecting that you have the means and the ability to come pick up your child immediately. So for those folks who sometimes we call and we can't get a hold of anybody, and students sit in the office for an hour, 2, 3, then those students will not be able to participate in this level of in-person learning. So what's the timeline? So tonight we're hearing from early childhood, middle school, high school, and Gerber. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Jen Roan is here with us tonight as well. And we're going to hear from all 4 of those levels and those sites tonight. After tonight, then early childhood, middle school, high school, Gerber We'll begin contacting families, gauging interest from families and their interest in returning in person. Staff will contact families based on first semester grades, attendance, and individual learning needs at middle school and high school. Gerber is a little different because the students are already on site, so there's no need to contact families. They will just start working with the Cunningham staff to develop a schedule and get those students incorporated into the in-person learning plan you'll hear about here in a few minutes. During this time, administrators will also be assigning instructors to teach content-specific courses at middle school, high school, and Gerber, and develop schedules for supervision at all levels. So the transitional timeline back to school after our break. So we've talked about this a little bit at our last meeting. The first 2 weeks, our first day of instruction back following winter break is January 4th. We're not expecting students to enter the buildings then. As I mentioned earlier, we do want to allow the community to rest a little after the break and after people traveling. I listened to the governor's press conference earlier, and you know, he and Dr. Ezike spent quite a bit of time talking about the Thanksgiving gatherings and people traveling for Thanksgiving. So we are going to allow some time for people to get back and hopefully be safe and healthy before they consider sending students back, and also for our staff to get back and everybody have some time to be at home and out gathering away from each other. So for those first 2 weeks, we are going to be providing remote learning for all students, which basically would not be a change from what they're doing right now. So everyone will continue to receive their instruction basically on the exact same schedule that they do currently. Staff will return to the buildings on Monday, January 11th. And then after the Martin Luther King holiday weekend, students will begin to return in person, and remote only students would begin to, we would work out what the plan would be for how the remote learning students are going to continue to engage with their teachers, and the in-person students would start coming into the classrooms that week of the January 19th. HR considerations, we work with our UEA leadership on this, and we are following all of the FMLA guidelines and COVID leave guidelines, but we really, Angie and her staff do a great job of this, working with people one-on-one, case by case, to make sure that no one is unfairly impacted by in-person learning related to their leave time and using their sick time and benefit time. We already have procedures for staff using COVID leave, and we'll work with our elementary staff on similar accommodations for sick leave. So because our elementary staff will be in the buildings, you know, with students in a classroom setting in a little bit of a different environment, there were several concerns about kind of unfair impact related to the fact that we'll be bringing back more elementary students than we will be bringing back middle school and high school students. So I just wanted to rest assure everyone's mind that we are going to work very closely with our elementary staff to make sure that they are not unfairly impacted by any in-person learning. So first up, we're going to have Principal Ladd share the in-person learning hybrid plan that her team at Early Childhood has been meeting about for several weeks now. So I'm going to turn it over to Beth Ladd here.
Thank you, Dr. Ivory Tatum. Nice to be with you all this evening. Thanks for inviting me. I just want to acknowledge the hard work of the team of teachers at Urbana Early Childhood and King Pre-K. I had approximately 12 plus staff members who have really been meeting monthly and bi-weekly since August to plan for a return to in-person. So lots of man hours and brains work together to come up with our plan. I'm going to share just some highlights this evening. We do have two pretty significant documents and learning guides that we put together, one for remote only at Early Childhood, and we have two different learning guides for our reopening plan. So we've spent a great deal of time talking about lots of different areas. So on a typical day, we have 12 teachers at early childhood who do an AM and a PM session. And our goal for reopening in January is to open 6 classrooms in the morning and 6 classrooms in the afternoon to in-person learning. And that allows us the flexibility for a couple of different areas. Our teachers will be teaching only to their in-person students during half the day, and will be teaching remotely for students that do not come to school for the other half of the day. We think that is developmentally appropriate for our age group, while other levels may be doing something different. That is the direction we are heading. This also means that we do not have to clean our classrooms in between sessions in the middle of the day. And that was something we spent a great deal of time talking about. But we'll be looking at we'll be looking at 1 session in the building for each classroom, which will allow for some better cleaning and management of movement throughout the building. We're going to continue with Wednesdays as a remote only day, allowing our teachers the opportunity to continue to collaborate and build upon how to manage both in-person and remote learning. Wednesdays are also a focus of social emotional learning for us. And so our social workers and related service people kind of lead that day in continuing to work with our students on their social skills and community building. We are under enrolled right now, and we feel that's obviously a direct result of what's happening in the world. And so we are looking at capping our classrooms for in-person learning at 10. Depending on how many of our families opt into in-person learning will determine if students can come 4 days a week or if they'll only be able to come 2 days a week. And this really is dependent on the number of families that are interested in in-person learning. I wanted to highlight as well that we did just open briefly at the beginning of November 4 classrooms for a pilot of return to in-person, and offered 20 plus students the opportunity to come in. And that was very meaningful for us in giving us some information on how our protocols and procedures effectively work or need to be tweaked, but also gave our staff the opportunity to see kids in person for a few days, and that was very helpful for us in our planning process. We are going to continue to send our food home for families to participate in snack or lunch or breakfast. With the developmental age of our kids and the management of eating without their masks on, we feel like that's the best way to address that situation. Jennifer, if you want to go to the next slide. We also have 2 typical full day classrooms at King, and they will mirror more what the elementary schedule is going to be, so an 8:30 to 11. But those classrooms did reopen for the pilot and have already practiced a lot of their protocols as well over at King. And so they will continue, but align to the elementary schedule, which is a little different from our early childhood. We have a pretty extensive offering of remote learning opportunities for our students and families that will continue for those families that are interested in staying remote. Our teachers do Zoom school 2 times a day with kids for about 20 minutes. Developmentally, that was the time we felt was appropriate for them to engage in that device. We offer choice board activities. We are doing a lot of gross motor activities, independent activities, and videos out to our students and families weekly, so they have the opportunity to engage in that synchronous work as well. And that will continue on in January for all those families that want to continue to engage in that. In terms of our classrooms, you've talked a lot about older students really being socially distanced in desks at a lot of the other levels. For early childhood, we've spent a great deal of time talking about how to group our students in the spaces, how to manage the materials and toys that they utilize during the day, and how to best clean those toys. We have a lot of protocols in place. On a typical school day, our staff are cleaning toys every day. We have definitely enhanced that as we are dealing with this pandemic right now, and definitely decreasing the amount of furniture and the amount of materials in our class to better be able to manage and social distance. We know that our kids need more guidance and structure in terms of that. We also have spent a great deal of time talking around the idea that the things we're asking our kids to do right now are very atypical and go against what we philosophically believe for our 3 to 5 year olds. And so planning thoughtfully how to engage in those conversations and those redirections while still encouraging being a part of a community. What can we encourage in terms of sharing, since sharing of materials isn't allowed right now, and how to continue to comfort and support our students with their social emotional needs has been a great deal of conversations in terms of our plans. Here is just what that time looks like for each group of teachers, whether they're teaching in person in the morning or the afternoon. We will continue to offer school-wide Zooms 2 times a day, and the teachers will offer 1 Zoom for remote learning the opposite part of their day from when they are teaching in person. So that is the only schedule change that will happen for our families. And our Wednesdays will continue to be focused around social emotional with our social workers leading that. And then at early childhood, we are, because we're going to 6 sessions in the morning and 6 in the PM, continuing with a 2.5-hour day. So the activities during that day are the same as they are during a typical school year. The amount of time spent in them and the activities within that are what are being adjusted. And then for our King students, because they are going to a half day, we did have to adjust those time frames for each of those settings. And so that is demonstrated right here. And I think that covers a lot of what we've talked about. You're muted, Dr. Ivory Tatum.
Beth, I have a question for you.
Yes.
This is Brenda Carter.
Yes, Brenda.
I was just curious, how do you plan on doing the gross motor? Will you be using the playground equipment or the gym area, or how are you going to utilize that?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I had it in my notes, but didn't highlight that, Brenda. So our students will remain in the classroom for everything except gross motor. And so we have identified the gym will continue to be used for gross motor. We're hoping that we will have the best mild winter we've ever had, and that we'll spend as much time out on our playgrounds as possible. We've also identified 2 other spaces in the building that we will use for gross motor if necessary because of weather. And then we will have a schedule of all of those locations with the ability to inside clean the spaces using the cleaning protocols that have been set forth by Randy and his team. And outside, we will not be necessarily cleaning the equipment based on the CDC recommendations, but all students who enter and leave the classroom will be washing their hands at both of those opportunities. And during our pilot, our students were out on that playground, and we felt like we were spying on them with how often we were at those windows watching them engage in play and being a part of the school community again.
So in the when you are in the gym, will equipment be used, and will that be cleaned and sanitized after each classroom, or will it be at the end of the day? How will that work?
So we will be using equipment. We won't be using as much equipment as we typically do. We also will be dividing the gym. We have a gym divider, so we will have 2 small groups in there at one time. And then in between groups, our custodian, we have the best custodian in the district, will be in there with Randy can give you the technical term for it, but whatever sprayer has been purchased will be utilized on that equipment in between the gross motor times in the gym.
All right. And will the children have, will they be required to wear their mask the whole time, or will they get a mask break? How will that work out?
So globally as a building, what we are saying is that our students will wear the mask from the time they get on the bus or are dropped off until they leave and are home again. Individually, we have students that we're working on individual accommodations for who may need breaks or who may need alternatives within their time frame. We found that with our students who participated in our pilot, for almost all of our students, the mask was not a problem. We also understand that when you're outside, you do have the ability to take the mask off, but we are not going to make that our practice. We find that the idea of maintaining that even while outside, recognizing that the best opportunities for us to keep our students socially distanced out there can also be sidetracked by them just running around and playing, right? And so if they're wearing their masks, we feel more comfortable with our ability to say that exposure has been reduced. But for individual students that we need to do that for, we will have a plan in place.
One more quick question, sorry.
Absolutely, no, it's fine.
Are the children going to be bringing their own water bottles? I know all the fountains and everything are closed, but I didn't know if they would be able to bring their own water bottles in or not.
So we will allow water bottles to come back and forth, but we have also purchased 3-ounce and 5-ounce paper cups. And so those will be available in the classrooms at all times for students to be able to have access to drinking water.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions for Beth? Or specific to pre-K or early childhood or teen? Okay, I think we're going to move on to Dr. Wiemelt. Beth, if you could hang out just in case there's some questions that come. All right. Next, we're going to go ahead and move on to Team UMS. Dr. Wiemelt's been working with a really large group of people and engaging a lot of voices around the UMS plan as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Wiemelt.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share with everyone our plans for third quarter as they stand right now. And very similarly to Principal Ladd at Early Childhood, a lot of the planning has taken place over many, many weeks with a lot of staff members. And as Dr. Everett mentioned, we have a large team at UMS that's actually growing. We're adding people. Every time we meet, we're adding more people from different roles and perspectives across different programming and different types of positions. And so we're really moving forward in a positive way. And I just have to give a shout out to our team and our union reps, our instructional coaches, our administrative team and teachers. We've been working really, really well together on this difficult task. So I'll jump right in. This slide has a lot of text on it, so I'll just highlight a few things. We are prioritizing approximately 250 to 300 students maximum to bring into the building for in-person learning 4 days a week and starting in third quarter. Wednesdays will stay remote for all students. We will still have the Learning Lab space open in the afternoons because, as a reminder, we have remote learning at UMS from 1 to 3:30. And so we would still have those gym spaces open for students to come in and access Chromebooks and the Wi-Fi and the infrastructure and just the space that's supervised for them to be continuing with remote learning. But our in-person plan, as we're supporting up to 300 students, does not change anything for the remaining 600 students that would stay remote. So our remote learning schedule stays the same all 5 days from 1 to 3:30. And so any family or student that stays with the 100% remote learning plan will not have to change schedules. They'll not have to change teachers. They'll keep their schedule exactly how it's been all year thus far, which is a big pro and something that we're really working to maintain. And we're happy that we're able to do that. But the students that we are going to prioritize to come in are students that have demonstrated the desire and the need to be in the building. So these would be students and families who want to come into the building. So they would be invited in, and they would agree to come in. So we won't be requiring any students or families to come in. But these the students that we are going to be inviting in are students that are struggling, whether that's with their grades or whether it's with their absenteeism or attendance, missing assignments. A lot of students are just, the students who are struggling at the middle school level are students who struggle with organization and that consistent check-in that they would normally get in person from teachers, kind of holding them accountable to turning in their work, right? In a normal year, whenever there's an assignment due, teachers are able to be right there and to collect it from students right then and there. And that's what's missing for a lot of students. They're struggling submitting work online. And that's what we're trying to break down, that barrier as we move into in-person learning. So a variety of different ways in which we're going to work with students with IEPs, students with 504 plans, ELL or dual language students. It's not a broad category that if you have an IEP, you are going to be invited in or required to come in. But if you are struggling or not engaging successfully and you have an IEP or 504 plan or you are ELL, you'll be invited in, right? So if there's not one particular type of student or student from different types of backgrounds that are going to be identified, it's ultimately comes down to data of who's struggling and would benefit from being in person, and then they would agree to come into person. So that's just real quick. And the one other thing I want to highlight is the middle section there that is with asterisks, is that instructional minutes would be increasing potentially up to 200 minutes per week for their core classes of English language arts, science, social studies, and math, which currently they get 60 minutes of direct instruction, synchronous instruction per class right now with remote learning. If they come in person and with the increase in remote learning time on Wednesdays, which I'll get into in just a moment, students would be able to go from 60 minutes to up to 200 minutes a week of direct instruction from their teachers, which is something that we really want to emphasize. I've been in a lot of conversations with families who are asking for more direct instruction than what we're able to provide with just our remote learning plan, and this is a way to do that. So Dr. Aritain, we can move to the next slide. So the way that we're going to do this is breaking it down into course groups, and it's all going to be primarily team-based. So the majority of the 300 students, up to 300 students that would be coming in, would be grouped into classrooms in small groups, anywhere between 8 to 12, maybe 15 if we use bigger rooms, students grouped together, and their teachers that they have in their schedule, so their math, language arts, science, and social studies teachers would come to their group and work with them at these times on these days of the week. So Mondays and Tuesdays, let's just say Joe, right, is coming in for in-person support. He would arrive at 9:45, between 9:45 and 10 o'clock. He'd go straight, he'd do the symptom screening at the door, check in, everything's good. He would go straight down to his assigned classroom based on the team that he's on, right? Because we know middle school students are assigned to teams, and that's how most teachers are assigned to teams. And so they would go to a classroom and he would have math from 10 to 10:45 with his math teacher. And then at 10:50, it would switch to the language arts teacher, and he would have language arts with his teacher for the next 45 minutes. And then for about 35 minutes, he would have lunch in his classroom. And then asynchronous support, which would be just basically like a homework study support class to work on the assignments that are due, right, with remote learning, because remote learning will still continue in the afternoons. So that's Monday, Tuesday. It's a math and ELA focus. So across the school, math and ELA teachers would be coming in to work in person on the Mondays and Tuesdays. And science and social studies and other staff would not be required to be in person on those days. They would be required to come in on Thursdays and Fridays. And then that's when math and language arts teachers would not be required to be in the building, right? So then on Thursdays and Fridays, Joe would come in, go through the same screening process, go to the same classroom that he's been going to all week. And instead of having math teacher coming to his room, he would have a science teacher come to his room first for 45 minutes, social studies teacher, lunch, and then asynchronous support. So this would be the same for all 9 teams, all 300 students that are coming in person, and they would have their teacher that they have on their regular schedule in the afternoons with them. And the focus of that morning time will be pre-teaching of what's coming later on in the remote learning class, reteaching what was taught before, like the previous day, supporting them with more intensified kind of interventions and support around the homework, allowing retakes on assessments, a variety of different things that is specific to those classes that they're in with those teachers. So what we had been doing first quarter and second quarter was more of a catch-all kind of asynchronous support for the morning, but it wasn't necessarily with your teacher that you had. It was with just a staff member who was there to support you. But with this plan, it's your actual teacher who knows exactly what work you're missing, or what work you still need to do, or what work you're getting ready to do right later that day. And so that's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Wednesdays, just as a reminder, no one would be coming in person in the mornings at all, because that would be a day that we are focused on cleaning, focused on just reorganizing, taking a temperature check of the building, making sure everything's ready to go for Thursday and Friday, and cleaning, of course, in between those Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And then in the afternoons, perfect segue would be, so I'm just going to break this down. As you can see, the middle bar is the grayed out bar it represents Wednesday. And so students could still come in person at 1 o'clock to go to those learning labs to be able to log in for remote learning on Wednesdays. But Monday and Thursday, Tuesday and Friday, it would continue exactly how it's been going all year. So this is the current remote learning schedule at UMS. So on Mondays and Thursdays, they go periods 1, 2, 3, and a 7th period, plus office hours and any interventions or related services that students need. And then on Tuesdays and Fridays, it's periods 4, 5, and 6, plus a 7th period for any student who has that, office hours or interventions. So the afternoons don't change for anybody. It's the exact same for all 970 plus students that we have at UMS. Nothing changes. And so the students that don't come in person, nothing changes for them either. They keep their same schedule. They keep their same teachers. Wednesdays, I do want to highlight that thus far this year, Wednesdays have just been a 35-minute SEL lesson plus office hours and asynchronous time for students to work on homework. We've received a lot of feedback from families and students and staff that we need to do a little bit more on Wednesday afternoons as a part of our remote learning schedule, while still maintaining a supportive space for students to receive that help. So instead of making it another day of class with more assignments, it's going to be a day that would be focused on team building, community building, and what's called these course group breakouts will be an opportunity where students are in a Zoom logged in as their team. So team dynamic, for example, you would go to your SEL lesson on one Zoom link, and then after that, you would have some team building activities and like team recognitions, some game time, some socialization time. That's another thing that families and students are asking for, is more opportunities to socialize, because they don't get that right now. And then at 2:10, we would break them off into course groups. So students that need help with math would go with the math teacher. Students that need help with science go with the science teacher, so on and so forth for all of their subjects. And so then at 3 o'clock, it would transition to what we have been doing for office hours and interventions. And so the combination of mornings, the course groups from starting at 10 o'clock, and the increase of instructional time on Wednesdays, that's where we get that increase of up to 200 minutes per subject over the course of a week for students, which is really exciting to see. We've only been providing about 60 minutes per week for students thus far. So students that are struggling the most right now would get more than double of what they've been getting in terms of instructional minutes. So this is what it will look like in the afternoons. And this is my last slide, I believe. And so I'll pause for a moment and take any questions.
So, Joe, this is Peggy. When you say that, one of the benefits or one of the changes in this proposed new plan is that the students who will be coming in person will be meeting with their actual teacher,
Mm-hmm.
which hasn't necessarily been the case, I guess, up till now, I presume.
That's right, correct.
So will that actual teacher then also be teaching remotely in the afternoon? I mean, how are we assured? I mean, can a family be assured that their child will be with their actual teacher, both in person and for the remote portion?
Yeah, 100%. So if you go back, Dr. Ivy Tatum, to the previous slide, I'll try to map out what like the teacher's day will look like. So yeah, perfect. So if I'm a math teacher, right, and I would come in person at 10 o'clock I would start my in-person teaching at 10 o'clock with a group of students that are on my team, and they're students that I have during the day in the afternoon that I have online, right? And so, but it might be it will be a mixture of students from across my classes. So I might have 2 kids from first period, 2 kids from second period, 4 kids from fifth period that are in my group that I go to as a math teacher. I'm pre-teaching with them, I'm reteaching with them, I'm just providing an extra layer of math for them. And I teach from 10 to 10:45 with one group, and then I teach from 10:50 to 11:35 with another group. Both of those groups are my students. Both of those groups are students that I have in one of my classes in the afternoon. So then at that time, the students are in my classroom for the morning. And then once lunch happens, students transition, they leave that small classroom and they go to the big gym for learning lab time. And as the teacher, I stay in my classroom and I start Zooming with my classes in the afternoon. Some of them are the exact same kids that just left my room to go down to the gym. I'll see them online on Zoom. They'll just be in the gym while I'm in my classroom. And the students that are at home or that stay remote, I'll still teach them first period, second period, third period, like we have been all year. And so, yes, we 100% guarantee that every student will keep their teacher and keep their schedule the same.
Okay. So it sounds like you have a fair amount of, participation then among the teachers at middle school. I mean, if you can kind of make that.
So yeah, so we're assigning them. So they don't have a choice. So they'll be assigned Monday and Tuesday for math and language arts. And then we have other staff members assigned as well. Every single staff member at UMS will be assigned either Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday, or for individualized situations like specialized classrooms, like life skills, special education settings, or other more specialized settings. Those teachers and students might just come in for mornings only, 4 days a week, instead of full days twice a week, right? They're gonna design their schedule to meet the needs of their students that have more severe or intense needs. That's better for their schedule. But every single staff member will be assigned to be in person unless they qualify to continue working remotely. If they already qualify based on medical needs or whatnot with HR, then we would provide someone else to be in person for their groups, and they'll be Zooming in from home or from wherever they're working remotely.
Okay. Great. Thank you. It sounds like a lot of positive changes all around.
I think so. You know, there's a combination of anytime there's a big change like that and coming back to the building, there's worry and questions but there's also a lot of excitement. There's a lot of teachers that are saying, I can't wait to be able to get back in person and work with students in a safe way. And they're also really appreciative that we're going to where it's not everybody back in the building all at once, all of a sudden in January. It's a slower transition. So it's only half the school coming in at once versus half the staff, coming in at once, and only 300 students coming in at once instead of 450 students and all 150 staff, right? So they feel that this is a safer plan, a better plan to transition back in.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Joe, how many students do you expect in each classroom?
It will range anywhere from 8 to 15. Most of our classrooms at UMS fit about 10 to 12 at 6 feet apart with desks 6 feet apart. But there are some classrooms, of course, that are bigger, like science labs are bigger and you can fit 15, 6 feet apart in those science labs. And then we're also going to use bigger spaces for rooms if we need more, right? So if we need a group of 20, because let's just say on Team Dynamic, there's a group that needs to come in and there's 20 of them, we'll use a bigger space like a gym deck or a cafetorium, room 1520, that meeting space that holds more capacity at 6 feet apart, and we'll use those bigger rooms for those groups. But the average group will be anywhere between 8 to 12. And so our goal is that if we have 9 teams at UMS, right? So 3 teams per grade. Each team, we're going to try to get in anywhere from 20 to 30 students per team. So if you do the math, if it's 20 students, that means 60 at each grade. So that's right, 180. And so that's the bare minimum. We'll start there and then build up from there up to 300. But if we did that 20 per team, that would be 10 in each group, if there's 2 groups per team.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Joe, I was hoping you could walk me through a contingency if, let's say, a staff member or a student came and tested positive? I'm trying to figure out, what, given there's kids moving around the building and teachers holding half their classes, how, potentially, like how many people would have to quarantine if, say, a teacher ended up coming down positive?
Sure. No, good question. So, and that's the other thing that makes our staff feel a little bit more at ease with this plan versus the original blended plan that we were talking about back in the summer, which would have required all staff and half the students. So I say that because I want to be careful of the language I'm using because I just want to be mindful of my language use. But if a teacher that's coming in on Monday and Tuesday, let's say we'll just keep with math. If that math teacher tests positive, they will have seen one group of 10 and another group of 10. And then the language arts teacher would have seen that same group. So those students are grouped together and they're staying in their rooms in the morning, and then they're transitioning to bigger rooms later in the day. So if that teacher tests positive and it's within the time frame of, we do the contact tracing, we're only talking about those 20 students, those 2 teachers. And then if they're in close contact within 6 feet for longer than 10 minutes, then any other student would also have to quarantine as well. So it would depend on which group they went to for the afternoon, right? Because some students will stay in smaller groups for the afternoon and some students will go to the bigger lab spaces. So it really just depends on how the contact tracing would play out. But a typical situation would be both of those groups of students and both teachers. And if it's within the window, potentially the other the other teachers that would come in to contact with those students as well, which could be other staff members later on in the day. So it could range from those 2 groups of students and up to 6 staff members approximately. Whereas if we were doing our blended plan that we had originally developed back in the summer, we would have had to have quarantined an entire team of 100 students, right, and about 10 to 12 staff members. So there is still a chance that we would have to quarantine upwards of 50 people, for example, at a time. But that's a safer play than quarantining 100 plus if we were back in person completely, right? Just trying to put comparisons out there.
And the benefit, Paul, too, I think, is with us keeping our schedule the way we kept it, is those students would just naturally transition back to their 1 to 3:30 synchronous learning time as they return to our remote.
Yes, thank you for saying that. I had that noted and I wanted to say that out loud and I forgot, but that's the other really strong benefit of this plan is because if we would have gone to the original blended model that we had talked about back in the summer, that's a totally different schedule. And so that would require changing lots of student schedules back and forth between in-person and between remote learning. If we have a rise in cases and we have to quarantine students or staff, nothing changes in the afternoon. Everybody's remote anyway. And those students would just be remote. Nothing changes for their schedule. They don't have to change teachers. Also, any staff that qualifies to work remotely during an in-person plan, they can still work remotely in the afternoon with this schedule, whether we, and let's just say cases across the county rise again and we have to go back to just remote learning. The schedule remains intact in the afternoon. Still nothing changes, which is really good for students and staff and families in terms of consistency.
So I didn't know we were going to ask questions along the way, and I meant to ask this when Jennifer was talking earlier. But with the announcement in the last 24 hours of the university being just weeks away from being able to extend the saliva test out to the community, that would be great because I think it would have a positive impact on this and eliminate some of the risks that both of our in-person citizens spoke to in that the testing and the immediate response back. Are we having continuing discussions? And I don't want to take away from Travis's time to explain the high school.
So I've not met with the U of I recently, but again, John, there are significant costs the saliva testing is not free. So with our initial cost proposals or cost analysis, you know, just looking at 1 quarter of our participating in the U of I saliva testing protocols. If we tested every student and every staff member for a quarter, I think it was, I'm trying to remember, Carol, was it $900,000? I've got that number someplace, but it was a significant amount of money. That's $20 per test for, and that's just if we tested people once a week. So not that we don't want to participate in the saliva testing program. I think there are other protocols that we can, you know, we can still revisit the conversations with Carl. I know Unit 4 was kind of piloting that a little bit, but they are now back remote. So I have to touch back, get back in touch with them around how that went with the nurses being trained to be able to rapid test people right there when staff or students were exhibiting symptoms. But yeah, I mean, I think the conversations are still open around that, but there are costs associated with us participating in the saliva U of I's program.
Thank you.
Yep. Other questions for Dr. Demelt?
I have a quick one, and I guess this could, well, maybe not early childhood so much, but for UMS and UHS too. So Travis, if you're listening, are you allowing time with your identification of the students who really should be doing the in-person learning? Are you allowing for the possibility of siblings who also might not necessarily qualify, but their parents say, well, look, you know, if my one kid needs to go, I'd like my other one to go. And is that an issue at all? And also second part of the question is, I know you said that you're going to build, you've got that core number and you're going to kind of build from that. Will you be able to let kids in to attend in person, even if they don't necessarily meet the extra need that you're trying to identify? I mean, if they just say, I'm doing okay, my grades are fine, or socially I'm doing okay, but I still want to be in person, or is there going to be space for those students as well?
Those are great questions. And we were talking about that earlier today in our planning meetings. And the sibling question is the way in which it overall, the majority of students who have siblings, both typically or all of them would typically qualify. But there may be situations where one student's doing well and the other one isn't. And so yes, we would allow siblings in. That's what we've been doing thus far, first and second quarter. When we have had like the learning lab spaces, it's often we've been prioritizing a lot of times the families that have more than one middle school sibling. Of course, this would only be if they had another middle school sibling. We wouldn't allow an elementary or high school student to come in, of course, but that is part of what we're trying to build, and that will be part of the conversations as we're developing lists of students to contact and invite in. The second part of your question related to, I'm blanking. What was the second question?
It was for kids who may not have been identified as really needing to be in person, but they just really would like to be in person because they feel it'll be better for them.
Yep. We're going to prioritize students that meet the criteria first. If after we have exhausted that list, invited all families, and there's still space within that 300 number, then we would be able to open it up to other students who are wanting to still come in. But they would be like a second layer of invite after we've exhausted the list of students who need to be in person. So it's, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so it's possible, but it wouldn't be right away. Because we want to spend a substantial amount of time at the beginning of the quarter trying to get in the students that are struggling and that the data are showing that they're struggling.
Yep, that makes sense. Thanks.
I was going to go back to the sibling question. We were just, as Joe mentioned, we were just having this discussion with the elementary group, and then I met with Joe and Travis after the elementary meeting earlier today to talk about siblings, because I think part of you'll hear about this at our next meeting, but we are trying to keep elementary groups very small because they are going to be in classroom spaces, not some of the bigger spaces that UMS and UHS may be able to provide. So we are trying to keep those groups around 10-ish. So siblings will be a little more of a challenge. However, the other challenge, and and this is more of a UHS concern, I think, than UMS, is that we know that there's some of our high school kids who are the babysitters, basically, for younger students. And so that is going to be something that we'll have to take into account as we survey elementary families. We were talking today about how we can capture that in the survey when we send the survey out next week. So we know that there's some families who, when they see the elementary plan, will very much want their students back in person, but it will maybe impact whether or not their high schooler can be back in person. So those are just some individual conversations that I think we're going to have across levels, and just work with families who have those needs, where they need their high school student because they're at work. They need the high school student caring for their younger age siblings throughout the morning. So that'll just be something we'll have to work out. But yeah.
Thank you.
Other middle school questions? Okay, so Dr. Email, again, if you can hang out, just in case there's things that come up at the end here. And we're going to switch gears to UHS into Mr. Corson.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. If I can take just a second, I do want to acknowledge and thank the 4 community comments at the beginning. They speak a lot of truths in those comments. And those are the things that we're juggling with right now. Family health, inequities in education that has existed and that have also been created through remote learning. The piece of remote that's working for students, yet there's some inconsistencies in how we deliver our information, how we deliver our instruction can be frustrating for students and families. And then just the SEL component on the last comment, the kindergartner. Our students are missing out that social emotional piece that they're used to coming to school. So I want to acknowledge those 4 areas that were brought up. And those are the items that we struggle. Some outweigh others, but they're valid opinions and valid concerns. Also want to thank the remote learning committee from the high school, department chairs, staff, students, and families, and the other admin on my team for giving the feedback for the last 3 or 4 months to help us move forward with this. Because, we've never been taught how to do this. And teachers and students and families, we're all trying to figure this out together. So appreciate the feedback that we have gotten thus far. Want to remind families at the high school, we have our round table tomorrow night at 5:30. So please join us so we can get additional feedback from you. So as Joe said, we're pretty similar with the middle school in a lot of the aspects of what we're proposing to start in January. Right now, we have a significant number of students who are failing multiple classes. And these are the students that we need to somehow reach, connect with, and do something a little different than what we're doing right now. We have on the slide here, working with students with more than 1 D or 1 F. We're really looking at the multiple Fs first, and we'll work our way back to students who may have Ds in classes, because we do have a significant number of students failing multiple classes, which will have an impact in not only this year, but in next year, getting students recaptured, caught up, get that credit back. So this does have a domino effect the longer that this consists and goes on. We're looking at chronic absenteeism. Our attendance rate is really high. It's our engagement rate that we're struggling with. We have a lot of students who log on to their Zoom classes, and then that's it. The asynchronous material is not getting completed and turned in. Students have told us it's hard to engage in a class through the computer. I'm sitting there listening to my instructor, but I find it hard to engage. We had a couple student meetings when we met with freshmen through seniors. They gave us a lot of really good feedback moving forward. But one of their biggest concerns was it's just hard to engage. They're missing an element of school. Also looking at students who with the IEPs and 504s, we need to make sure we're meeting minutes for these students, and their engagement as well during the synchronous time. And then our dual language and ESL students, there are some barriers there that we're seeing. Simply just logging into Clever, logging into a Google Classroom. So we're hoping that if we can get some of our struggling students into the building and take care of some of these logistical pieces, then the engagement becomes easier for them. Yeah, you go to the next slide. So similar to Joe, the dates on the top, January 4th, 11th, 19th, that's the same for everybody. We actually presented a plan last Tuesday to the staff before Thanksgiving break, and we have adjusted it in the last 48 hours based on feedback that we got from our staff, from our students. And we're going a little bit more in line with the middle school. We had this course-specific instruction periods that kind of sandwiched our synchronized time from 10:30 to 1. And it just didn't chunk very well. It wasn't smooth transitions. So we took kind of a piece of advice from Joe here, and we moved all of our course specific instructions to the mornings. And that'll also be a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday when we have those days for the students to come in. But we're breaking it down a little different. Staff in that first, in the first box where it says Monday and Thursday, math, English, fine arts, foreign language, those departments would report to the building on those 2 days, Mondays and Thursdays. On Tuesdays and Fridays, our other departments, science, social studies, FACS, CTE, PE, health, driver's ed, they'll come in on Tuesday and Friday. And I want to state why we're doing this. One of the students' comments that came through in one of our meetings was one of our teachers at home had put a dry erase board behind her. And the very next day, the student made a comment and said, "Oh, you have a dry erase board behind you. I feel like you are in the classroom now teaching me." And it had this impact on that student, like, now this is real. This is a real classroom, real instruction. And so if we have our staff come in on Monday and Thursday, they're actually going to have an opportunity to be in their classroom teaching all of their classes that they see during the week. And you'll see that here in a little bit down below. But I thought it was important for our students to see the faculty who are able to come to the building and provide that instruction, that it takes place in the classroom. It's going to have a different feel to it. So the departments will come in on those days, and how it'll work is 8 to, we'll have our normal drop-off MTD time from 7:40 to 8. That's what we're used to in a normal year. MTD drop off by 8. Students will grab a breakfast. We have a plan for breakfast where we're spaced out. We can eat our breakfast safely. And then 8 o'clock, we'll have our first session of our course-specific instruction. And this could go a couple different ways depending on the number of students that we're looking to host. Right now, we feel pretty comfortable with about 215 students. That may go up, that may go down, depending on kind of final grades coming in for the rest of the semester. But 8 to 8:35, you could actually have a math section similar to what Joe was talking about for the middle school. And then 8:40 to 9:15 could be an English section. 9:20 to 9:50 could be your fine arts section. And then 9:55 to 10:25 can be your foreign language courses. This also allows teachers to have their students on their current rosters who are struggling. That was important. In our plan that we sent out Tuesday, that probably wasn't going to be able to happen due to scheduling issues. But this way, by having the departments come in on the same day, all the staff members from their departments, Algebra 1 teachers should have their Algebra 1 kids that they're teaching during the synchronous time. So then Tuesday and Friday mirror Monday and Thursday, just different departments, different content structure. The 200 and so students will come in Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So they'll get their extra support in all their classes that they need. It's just the teachers will be different depending on the days that they come in. Wednesdays, you can see here, I just have it up here in this gray area. Wednesdays is all remote, just like UMS. It's a time where we'll use our, we'll complete our faculty meetings, department chair meetings during the Wednesday morning times with nobody in the building. That'll be the deep cleaning time for our maintenance staff. So if you want to go down to the next one, Jennifer. Oh, no, I'll stay there for a second. I do want to say this. You'll notice that special ed and ELL, they're not listed here in the departments. Majority of our special ed teachers will co-teach or provide an instructional in one content area. So if they co-teach math and they provide an instructional class in math, they would show up on the math days. If they're primarily co-teaching social studies and doing an instructional social studies course, they will come in on the Tuesday and Friday. So there's a little bit of ironing out that we need to do there with a few staff members who may teach a math and a science class, but there's very few of them. So, and then ELL is the same way. Our ELL department is similar to our SPED department. We have to iron a few things out with that staff. So then once the morning session is over with the course specific instruction time, this is the exact schedule that we have right now with our synchronous remote, with the exception of our Wednesday. And I'll go over that in a second. During this time here, if you are in a building, whether you're a staff or a student, students will leave their course specific instruction classes. They will go to a learning hub in the building, whether that's a small gym, library, computer labs, and teachers will go to their classrooms. So from this point on, our teachers won't see their students for the remainder of the day. So it does limit the time that we're with our students for safety concerns. Students will be around other students safely, like we've had them in the small gym for our hub really all semester. We've been housing 35 to 40 students every day in the small gym with great success. So this is back to our synchronized time that we're used to right now. The only difference is our Wednesday. And right now, our Wednesdays we teach 1 through 8 remotely on Wednesdays. It's only about 16 minutes per period. Some teachers have used that for an SEL type teaching. But the feedback that we have received from students and staff is looking at this format here, where we would have an A week where Monday and Tuesday during the synchronous time, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you will see your periods 4, 2, 3, and 6, 3 days in a row during that A week. And you'll see your 5, 1, 7, 8 on Thursday, Friday. The next week, which would be our B week, you would see periods 4, 2, 3, 6, Monday and Tuesday. And then you get an opportunity to see your periods 5, 1, 7, 8, 3 times in a week. The timing of it doesn't change much. Right now, in the 2-week span, our teachers see their students 168 minutes in a 2-week span. This bumps it up to 170 minutes for 2 weeks. So the time isn't greatly increased, but the one thing that it could provide is some of the SEL mental frustration that we're hearing from students on our Wednesdays. A lot of students skip Wednesday classes because they're 16 minutes. They feel rushed going through a 1 to 8 schedule, clicking on 7 different Zoom links after 16 minutes. And this felt less stressful to our students when they brought this up to us. They were really the ones that asked us to look at Wednesday schedules for them. So we're hoping to run an A and a B week for that in this nature here. And then lunch, 1 o'clock, students would have a grab and go lunch. They would leave campus at that time. And staff would have their lunch 1 to 1:50. Staff would come back to the building if they were in the building that day from 1:50 to 2:25, which we encourage collaboration time, office hours for students remotely. And then the teachers can have their 50-minute prep at the end of the day, 2:26 to 3:16 to prepare for the next day.
Questions?
Mr. Corson, this is Peggy. I guess, when you were talking early on in your remarks about, how, well, first of all, I applaud you for actively soliciting student input to this new plan and staff input, of course, too. But when you talked about how some students talked about the importance of seeing their teachers in a real classroom setting, and so that will be an advantage, is that the students will see their teachers now in a classroom setting. Does that mean that that a teacher will be teaching some students in person who will be there, and at the same time teaching the students remotely? I mean, so they'll be doing, which I understand is not the case at the middle school. Or
So our synchronous time here, this 10:30 to 1 block, it's all synchronous. There is zero in-person instruction during this time. So this mirrors, that 10:30 to 1 time mirrors exactly what we're doing right now. So students will be either at home or they'll be in a learning hub in front of a computer, and the teachers will be teaching their classes either from home or in their classroom by themselves. Now, those learning hubs will be supervised by other staff members, obviously. Yeah, teachers will not be teaching in-person, remote, simultaneously. They will not be doing that.
Gotcha.
But the time that they will see their teachers in the class, it will be these times. That's why I flipped to this slide.
Yeah, they will see. Yeah, teachers will see their students during this 8 to 10:25 time. And this is course specific recapture. This could be reteaching. This could be going over current content. You talk about differentiation. We're looking at no more than 12 students in these classes here with their teachers. And students are going to have different needs. And so it's going to be challenging, but yet rewarding during these times, because you can really differentiate a lot and meet your students' needs during this time.
Do you anticipate approximately the same number of students that, Dr. Weevil talked about at the middle school? I mean, are you aiming for 300? I mean, do you have a kind of a limit or a optimal group size you're looking to invite to come in person?
Right now, the number that we're at right now is about 217 to 219. Again, that can fluctuate. And this is just based off of some reports that we ran last week. It already changed from last week because teachers are doing a really good job right now of showing a lot of grace for our students. They're having really good conversations about grading policies within their departments. They're looking at what's absolutely necessary for their students to have learned to earn that credit with validity and reliability, because they understand that they can't get everything in a normal school year. So it's been challenging to say, okay, this is what my students need. Let's say for German 1, this is what they absolutely need. Now they're not going to get everything that they got in what they would receive in a normal year, but this is sufficient. And I can say, yes, they got the credit for first semester. So some reteaching will happen here. I envision a lot of reteaching early on during these times.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Corson?
So the lower numbers at the high school level, is this also, well, I'm going to start the question over again. Kind of the growing body of knowledge about COVID is that the younger children don't seem to be carriers or vectors. Even the New York Times is covering research that is beginning to show that in other parts of the world, as well as in the United States. And so are we taking extra steps the older the children get The older the students get, they're not children by the time they're in high school. But are we taking extra steps to try to ameliorate some of the concerns that that the community does have about if there is going to be a spread in the school areas, it's probably going to be at the upper grade levels?
Yeah, honestly, there's quite a bit that we're thinking about here. There is an opportunity for high schoolers to be more social outside of school, which most of the spread happens outside of schools. Schools that are in session right now, who may have had to close down, it was because of outside contact and not within the school. So there's a couple things. Yeah, high schoolers are going to be more social, which could increase the opportunity for a spread. There's also things to consider that high schoolers could tend to follow the expectations a little better in terms of wearing a mask, being in the right spot. And there's also the aspect of a few of our seniors, when we met with them, they actually enjoyed remote because they felt like it was really preparing them for next year and after high school. That, a lot of time management and responsibility has fallen on them, maybe sooner than what they were wanting. So remote is working for quite a few of our students. I would say probably about 3/4 of our students, well, maybe not quite 3/4. A good portion of our students are doing really well with this. They're doing the best they can with it. The social aspect of being in high school definitely has affected a lot of them. Their grades might be up, but their emotional status is down. And it can be the other way around too. My grades may be poor, but my social interactions is still okay. There's just a lot to think about here and a lot of different points of views. The thing that the admin team, our approach to this is we can disagree with this, and that doesn't mean that you're right, I'm wrong, or I'm right, you're wrong. It's just a lot of opinions and what to do here and a lot of things to juggle and trying to do this the best we can for our students. We have gaps in our learning that we are well aware of. Afraid that gap might be getting a little bigger. And how do we combat that once we do get back to in-person? A lot of challenges down the road here. And so trying to minimize some of those challenges that we're going to face come the summertime and next August is really our main goal.
Thank you.
And that's including health and education and everything.
Okay, last but not least, I'm going to move on. If you have other questions for Mr. Corson, I ask you to kind of hold those until we hear from Gerber. I know our Gerber students are a unique group, and their in-person learning needs are even more paramount, I think, just because of the situation at Gerber and the fact that they're just in a different kind of school community. So I'm going to have Jim Rohn from Gerber explain the in-person learning hybrid plan for our Gerber students.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you all tonight. So our plan is a little bit different than the other schools, and we actually have been practicing this plan up until recently because of some of those unique needs that Jennifer just highlighted there. Our kids really struggle both social, emotionally, and academically, and so they all definitely fall into that that very needy group that really thrives on in-person instruction. So our plan is that students will attend Mondays through Fridays from 8:15 to 11:30. We are going to keep kids in very small groups, 4 to 7 students per class. They'll remain in that classroom the entire time that they're in person with their homeroom teacher and teacher assistants. And we're really going to minimize the transitions. In a typical school year, we try to have our kids moving and shaking and have our teachers really specialize in different content areas. But this year, safety is a priority. And so our teachers are collaborating with one another so that they can teach all subjects to their homeroom group. And they've been troopers about that, and it's been working really well. So each teacher is teaching math, reading, English, science, and social studies. Of course, given our high priority for social and emotional learning, we're still doing social skill lessons to our groups, and we're also trying to integrate electives as possible. And so each teacher has had a little wiggle room in how they're best structuring those subjects for their homeroom groups within that 8:15 to 11:30 time period. And then outside of our in-person time, we've really tried to collaborate with our partners in Cunningham's residential program to find interesting ways to infuse PE and art and other educational and academic opportunities to have our kids have some of that asynchronous time. Our kids have a whole lot of needs, and there's a whole lot of programming that happens for them therapeutically outside of the school day. So we've really worked very closely with residential to integrate as much academic learning into that therapeutic programming as possible. Any questions?
Well, hi, this is just Peggy. Ms. Roan, you know, even though you're going to be maintaining very small groups of 4 to 7 per class, are you able to accommodate all of your Gerber students in that by doing so? You have enough teachers to spread them out in space and so forth?
Absolutely, yeah. So like I said, we've been practicing this plan this fall with teachers who have been willing, teachers and our wonderful TAs who have been willing to come in person, and also with some of our teachers and TAs zooming in. We've been able to space our classrooms very well, and it has really worked beautifully, Peggy. The kids have been super excited to be in person. They've been very mindful of the safety concerns, wearing masks, doing a lot of hand washing, you know, helping clean their personal workspaces. So we felt really pretty good about the routines that we've set in place. And I think we're all hoping to get back into those as early as possible in January.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Well, as you can see, the extent of our presentation here tonight, that one of the other reasons why we separated the groups is we knew we wanted to share very comprehensive information with you for each level and have an opportunity to take questions. This PowerPoint has been online since we posted the meeting. We updated it a little bit. We've made a few little tweaks in the last day or two, so we'll make sure that this most recent version is also placed on the website for families to go and view. But again, we're really excited about the opportunity, and as every single person here has mentioned, safety is our biggest priority. While we can't control the things that happen outside of school and in the community, like Travis talked to, kind of spoke to our older students who do tend to socialize and do other things. We can control the environment that they're coming into when they're with us during the school day. So that is our biggest focus right now. So any other questions before we kind of send our administrators on their way?
Well, Jennifer, could I just kind of circle back to one of the comments that our, I think it was Leslie Sherman made during citizen statements, where she had some concerns about platforms used by teachers, at the middle and high school level. I mean, and had hoped that that would be reflected in this plan that we're working on. I guess my thought as I was listening to that was, isn't that something that, parents can bring up with their current teachers or building principals, that doesn't, addressing that doesn't have to be part of this official plan, that is, kind of implementation questions and concerns will continue to happen, and those should be addressed as they come up by parents with their relevant building principal. Is that true?
Absolutely. And I'll let Travis address that as well. But I guess my thought, I don't know, Travis, were you on to hear the public comment read from Ms. Sherman?
Yeah, and that's there's always to be consistent in as much as we can do. We need to be consistent across the board. At times, there's autonomy for teachers to use certain platforms, but obviously, if there's extreme difficulty and frustration, it simply just give us a phone call. We can look into it quickly to see if we can fix it. I would say if one person's having an issue with it, then there's probably multiple. But we try to be consistent across the board, but yet allow some autonomy as well. It's kind of a balancing act at times. But we don't want people being frustrated during an already frustrating time. So if we can change something, we absolutely will.
And we do have a lot of teachers that are piloting new technology and leveraging new apps and software. So, I mean, like we've learned a lot about something called Peer Deck that we didn't really, a lot of our teachers weren't using that prior to this remote learning experience. And I think we have quite a few now who are experimenting with it and learning more about it. So I think we will see some, like Travis said, some individuality and how some of the teachers are presenting some of that information. But if a parent has concerns, of course, all they have to do is reach out to the UHS administrator group, and someone will get back to them and help them with that. So, and we've had families who've done that. I mean, I think, anybody who emails me, I direct them back to Mr. Corson and the team. And their parents who, might go through the counselors, and then the counselors direct them back to the administrators. So, yeah, we're here to take those questions and work with families. And our staff will do the same thing. The teachers of high school, I think, have been really willing to work with families as things have been brought up. So,
thank you.
Other questions or comments? So I know that was a lot of information to absorb, but I hope you can really see that we have spent a lot of time. And again, I can't stress enough how thankful we are for all of the staff members, administrators as well, and directors, and the many, many teachers that are on this committee, because they've spent countless hours like changing these plans, tweaking these plans, trying to think of every single scenario that we possibly can. And there'll be some that we haven't thought of that we still might have to do some tweaking between now and January. But again, I'm just really proud of the work that we've already done. And I think moving forward with these plans, we'll be able to help a lot of students who are struggling right now, be in a better place. So. Okay. Well, thank you all for staying late with us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. It was really informative. Okay, moving on to topic number 10.2. I'm going to put you back on the spot, Jennifer. This will be to discuss the proposal to establish a district-wide equity task force.
All right, I'm switching PowerPoint here.
Jennifer, your mic's kind of muffled.
I know, I've been having mic issues today. I don't know what's wrong with it. If I get closer, is that better?
Yes.
My main mic is out, so I'm using my computer laptop mic. So I'll move a little closer. So, Okay. All right. So tonight we're here to talk about a second semester initiative. I met with board members in 2-on-2s and some individually last week just to get a little feedback. So I appreciate that. You sharing some of your ideas. I got great ideas from our board. As some of you have been on the board, have experienced some of these equity conversations in different ways. All of you, I think maybe if not only Tori, were involved in the creation of our resolution that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. So I appreciated the feedback and the great conversation related to what we're going to talk about now here next with this equity task force work. So as you know, the issue that I'm going to bring forward here is not a new problem. We have students in our county, Urbana, this is a national issue, who face disparities in educational opportunity and outcomes. This is especially true for students of color and for our students from low-income communities. We heard a very passionate plea from the young man who spoke from the U of I here during community comment tonight. But these disparities are even more glaring as we continue through this pandemic and the impacts of the many layers of remote learning that we have yet to even explore, and the implications from COVID in our district. So tonight I'm proposing we establish a special board committee in the form of an equity task force for the specific purpose of identifying these disparities and how they may be impacting the success of our students. You've heard from several really accomplished administrators who've worked with a lot of teachers. And as you've heard tonight, we have some significant groups of students who are struggling right now. And they're struggling because of some, the situation that we're currently in, but, there are also some struggles because of just some of our systems and policies and practices that have been part of Urbana School District for quite some time. So as a district, in conjunction with providing a free, appropriate public education, there's no more important task than ensuring equitable access to high quality instruction and improving outcomes for all of our students. So as part of our board policy 2150, we have the ability to establish these special committees that are created for very specific purposes to investigate special issues, basically resulting in a final report to the board at the board's discretion. So how can this equity task force kind of help us moving forward with some of the disparities that we are seeing currently and that we know historically exist in our community? So the goal for the task force would be to ensure that all of our students are receiving the resources, supports, opportunities they need to achieve success in our schools, basically by identifying inequities and access and barriers. So how are we going to do that? So first, we've got to spend some time recognizing the inequities that exist, create a plan or a timeline for responding to these equities. That'll involve some short-term planning and long-term planning, keeping in mind that it's not just about the resources and the supports and providing those things based on the needs of the students so that, we are able to predict their outcomes. But it's also about recognizing the district policies, our practices, our beliefs as a district that can further perpetuate some of these inequities, and we need to develop a plan to remove any obstacles and barriers that we may knowingly have put in place or maybe unknowingly that we've put in place over time that have now become barriers for some of our kids.
Jennifer, did you mean to be sharing your screen?
Oh, I thought I was sharing my screen. Sorry. Thank you, John. I'm like in slide 3 and nobody said anything.
We saw the document earlier, but yeah, I wasn't sure if you were. There we go.
Over there, go back here. You guys were listening so intently. So this is just our policy for the community and for the public that are viewing. This is the board policy 2150 that I mentioned. Our board policy language that does allow us to create a special board committee. So I already talked about that. We just talked about the goals for the task force. And then next is the resolution. So I definitely wanted to be able to share that. So I'm going to share here. This is our racial equity, our commitment, our resolution of commitment to racial equity. So I don't know if people have seen this, but we put it in a nicer document for you. So I'm going to highlight this first paragraph here about the equity mission of Urbana 116. This was adopted in November 2018. And it reads, we are a community devoted to dismantling inequitable practices so that all students reach their personal greatness. And success is no longer predictable by student identity, race, class, ability or disability, language, religion, sexuality, gender, immigration status, among others. So I think what I would like to see the work of the task force, one of their first tasks would be to really take a serious look again at our resolution of commitment to racial equity that the board approved in November 2018. And I want to reassure our community that we as a board and administration have not forgotten about this commitment. However, in this constantly changing landscape with racial unrest in our country, as well as being in the middle of a pandemic, basically, we need to revisit this as part of the Equity Task Force work. And all the conversations that we have regarding this will feed very nicely into upcoming strategic planning work that we're hoping to do. I know I've talked with the board privately, I think in public as well. As, one of my goals as superintendent was really to get into deeper into some strategic planning work this past spring and this school year. And unfortunately, that's not been able to happen because I don't want that work to happen via Zoom or virtually. So the beginning work of this racial equity task force won't take the place of strategic planning, but it will be a very nice addition and fit in the umbrella of that work once we're able to be on the other side of this pandemic and start having more of those long-range planning conversations. I also want to highlight this section 2 here. I think this fits really nicely with the future work of what the task force is going to be asked to do. The Board of Education supports the goals and commitments found in the equity audit of spring 2018, including but not limited to reviewing district policy, which I talked about just a few minutes ago, procedures and structures through an equity lens, offering ongoing professional development on culturally responsive curriculum and instruction and culturally responsive management, and increasing our recruitment and retention efforts so district faculty, staff, and administrators reflect the race and ethnicity of our student population. So this section will feed very nicely into the bigger piece of the equity task force, and we're able to break off into some action team groups, which I'll talk about here in just a second. So I just wanted to put that back out there and remind people of the good work and the really crucial and difficult conversations had around the commitment to racial equity. I know 2018 seems like forever as we've been living through 2020, hoping it would end, but this was not that long ago. So I just wanted to put that back out for our community to remember the hard work, and it was not forgotten work, and it will be part of the work of the Equity Task Force. So the role of the task force, as you saw in that policy 2150 language, would make recommendations for action steps to address disparities and inequities, set a timeline for implementation, and monitor progress and outcomes. I really would like, I know we can't have, we're kind of tied to the open meetings, the OMA rules, but I really want all board members to be involved in some part of the process, at least while all 7 of you are here. You know, not knowing who might be here after the April elections. But as of right now, we want all of you involved in some way. 2 members would serve on the larger task force, and we can talk about who we think those 2 members should be. I guess what I think should be the best is that we know we have Ann, Paul, and Tori, you know, not kind of volunteering you guys to volunteer, but I feel like since we know that the 3 of you will be here, you know, for a longer, we're going to talk timeline here in a few minutes, but I feel like having the consistency of having 2 members who we know will be here for many months to come, serve on that larger task force makes the most sense. However, that being said, we want the other 5 people to also have some involvement, because we know all of you have your own passions and things that you're really interested in. But there will be opportunities for other board members to serve on action teams once those are established here later in the spring. All of you are also on other existing committees. So as you're involved in this equity task force work, we would encourage you to take back your the things that are being shared as part of the equity conversations back to your existing committees that you also participate in throughout the school year. So how are we going to get people to volunteer? I know people are feeling really stretched and overwhelmed and just busy. It's a bad time of year to probably be asking people to volunteer for anything. But it is good timing with us going into a new semester and hopefully being able to bring students back in the building in the new year. So this is a good time for us to start this work. And again, we've spent the whole semester looking at our student data, trying to support students, coming up with plans. So we can see very glaringly in our face what some of our, where some of our barriers are and what some of our equity issues are right in the forefront, definitely because of COVID. So this is good timing for us to do this. So after talking to all the board members and getting input from all of you, what I'd like to do is have an open call for volunteers. We would survey staff members, including administrators, teachers, support staff, parents, guardians, representing all levels, from EC 12 all the way from EC through 12, and include student voice as well. I'll probably won't survey the students to get them to volunteer, but I will ask our administrators and some of our connected staff members to maybe nominate some UHS students. I talked to Dr. Remel about the possibility of some of our UMS students participating at the action team level, and he already has some students in mind. So we would send out a survey to staff, parents, and guardians, really eliciting people to volunteer for this effort. I know in the conversations with the board, a couple of you asked about what about the community? How, would we be involving outside community people, some of our community partners in this initiative? So I feel like right now, because we are short on time and we do have strategic planning work coming, hopefully very soon, and and by the end of the spring or summer, when we're able to be back in person, I feel like the strategic planning area is more of a place that is a better fit for our community members and some of our partners to represent their voice. Right now, we need to really get into some of the deep digging and asking ourselves the hard questions. And I feel like that needs to happen with people who are already engaged and know a lot about how our school district works. Bringing in people from the outside, we'll have to spend a lot of time kind of explaining, explaining basically what we do and how we do things. And if we start with people who are already engaged and already know our system and who already have an opinion about some of the areas that we can improve, That's kind of my target group to start with. That doesn't mean that when we get to the action team level that we could not involve more community voice. But at this very beginning level, with the larger, this first call out for volunteers, we really want to engage our immediate stakeholders who are already involved in what is happening in the Urbana School District. We do have a district parent teacher advisory committee, and we've not been able to meet. We have some people who are very committed to that work last year, but we want to re-engage them and ask them to participate as part of this group. Survey forms will also be shared with the principals. I know our principals work very closely with their PTAs and their PTOs, and they know firsthand parents that would be great volunteers to participate in this effort. So as we collect that survey data, I'll also share it with principals to get their feedback. As I mentioned a minute ago, not all volunteers will be needed at the very beginning. We won't be able to engage everybody in this process. We don't want to have 40 or 50 people. That again is more of a strategic planning effort. But we do need a nice number of volunteers to be able to really help us get this work started and do it in a timely manner. So we'll need volunteers for the first stage, and then of course we'll need volunteers for that action team level as well. So what is the timeline and commitment for those of you that are watching, thinking this might be something I'm really interested in? How much time and what's the commitment going to be? So I'd like to start this soon in January. Again, giving people a little time to decompress from the break and get back into the swing of things. So in January, we would get the larger task force meeting. Initially maybe meeting monthly, but what I have found, and many of you who are participating in Zooms quite often, the virtual meeting format has allowed us to meet more often. Some of the big committees, like today I had 75 people in the remote learning planning committee meeting. We would never get very much accomplished in a meeting with 75 people in person. But because we're able to do that via Zoom, it's more purposeful, it's very strategic, we use breakout rooms. So we're able to get quite a lot of work done. I think one of the holdovers when this pandemic is over is I think we will have more virtual meetings and include that as part of our work moving forward in the district. So since virtual meeting will be the way that we're going to be meeting starting in January, there may be the opportunity, if people on the committee agree, that we might be able to meet more than once a month. So there might be a possibility if everyone's on board with that we could maybe get more done if we meet twice a month. Following spring break, ideally, if we're able to meet monthly or maybe twice a month in January and February, we might be to the point where we have some action teams and some action team topics that we're ready to break off into some smaller groups ready to go. So at that point, we may be eliciting more volunteers to be part of that action team focus group model. So what is this, what's the process going to be? So I really foresee this as kind of being two different layers of work kind of happening at the same time. That first layer or first level of work is kind of that self-reflective piece. Many of you as board members who've been around for a while know that the district did some very involved equity, racial equity work in our schools. Board members participated in that. We had an equity leadership team, and that work was really well supported. And there were spaces for staff members to really have conversations about race and bias and how that impacts our students' experiences and outcomes. We haven't that model shifted. We had the interim superintendent come in, and we need to go look again afresh at what organizational structure, what systems would we want to put in place district-wide to get back to a structure where we could continue to have those conversations at the building level, not just happening at the board level, not just happening at central office, not just happening with the principals. Right now, we're engaging in these conversations at the administrative level through our administrative PD. But we need to come up with an organizational structure system that allows us to get that work back to the building level, to the teacher level, to the staff member level, to the student level. It may take a new form than the structure that we implemented a couple years ago. But that's not for me to decide. I want that to be the work of the task force to really come up with what that personal reflection process is going to look like moving forward. And then the second piece of the work, or the second layer, I guess, so to speak, is that technical problem solving layer. For us to really look at the inequities and some of these barriers that I mentioned earlier, we really need to understand the needs of our students, especially some of our most vulnerable students. So the best ways to do that is, I know you guys participated in the equity audit before, so equity audits, self-assessments to really identify our strengths and our needs. What are some of the trends in our data? What are some of the patterns that we're seeing related to our student success and our student failures? And really engaging our stakeholders through focus group interviews and their surveys. So some of the high leverage action team topic areas that I kind of feel like, if I go back to our resolution here, this section 2, what are some of those high leverage areas that we can address through the action teams? So some that came to mind to me right away are really thinking about what is that district equity leadership piece going to look like. It's going to be really difficult. All of us here at central office and all of our administrators and all of our directors already have really extensive roles and things that we're involved in. But where does that equity leadership piece fit, and who's where is that going to live from more of a district perspective? The implications from COVID, I don't think that's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think we need to say much about that. We know there are going to be many implications, far-reaching implications. So that definitely would be an area, action team topic area. Of course, academics, student support. You'll notice we don't have discipline, student behavior, listed here specifically, but that to me falls under that student support realm. How are we? I know we don't have students in the buildings right now, so we really haven't had very much discipline data to look at this year, but we have years and years of other discipline data that we can analyze. But that student support area, how we best support the students in all areas, not just with behavior, but with social emotional learning, with mental health, recruitment and retention is specifically listed in our resolution. We talked with the board about our intentions to recruit more teachers who look like our students and retain our teachers of color who tend to come and work with us for a short amount of time and then leave and go to a more urban area. How can we make Urbana more attractive to some of those teachers and keep them here? Technology, that is a huge high leverage area. We've been involved very heavily in replacing our chief information officer, and I feel like the technology role is so intertwined in basically everything that we do now and will do moving forward. So technology is going to be critical. We had a lot of conversations about finances here this year already and our budget. And we almost could put our budget in line up here with implications from COVID because we don't know what the lasting effects of this pandemic will have on our projections financially. Enrollment equity across our elementary schools. one of our principals mentioned being under enrolled. We have a couple of our buildings that have shown some decreases in enrollment, and then we have some of our elementary schools that have stayed the same. And so those are issues that we need to discuss as well, and how can we kind of restructure that in the future, not now, but in the future. Professional development. And this portrait of a graduate is something I've read a lot about. There are a lot of districts that kind of utilize a model of a portrait of a graduate. So when we talk about the students who leave UHS and go out to be productive citizens, what does that mean for them? What's the experience that we're providing to all of our students, not just the ones that are successful as they matriculate through our school system, but what do we foresee all of our students when they leave us? What's the portrait of a graduate for every single student that graduates from Urbana High School? So those are some of the topic areas that I'm kind of envisioning might come out of this. Again, once we get the task force together, there may be more. We can't have action teams on all of these because we'll be meeting forever. So we'll have to kind of put some parameters around the topics that we do decide to invest our time and energy in. But these were some that just quickly came to mind for me. So I'm going to stop talking now and take questions or comments or thoughts. And I will stop sharing. Everybody.
Hi, Jennifer. Thanks. This is Peggy. How do you envision that the action team topics will get selected and prioritized? I mean,
that'll happen, I think, with the bigger group that gets together in January and February when we start kind of pulling out our data and looking at some of our patterns and our trends.
Okay.
That's where those, I think some that I listed are just no-brainers, right? Like implications of COVID. Professional development is a huge one for us right now because of the huge learning curve that we had. We kind of hit a wall and everyone had to learn quickly about remote learning.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of those areas that we see student data wise? What are some of the things that maybe we're not providing our staff who are therefore not some of those practices and strategies, and in the resolution it talks about cultural relevant practices. So we doing our due diligence to provide PD that helps our staff members provide those culturally relevant practices. So I think once we get in and start pulling all that and doing some of those equity audits,
Okay.
that will kind of help those topics rise to the top.
Okay. Well, and I guess the other thing is I'm glad that you mentioned that you assumed student supports cover student discipline, because that's when I looked at that list, and I know it's not intended to be an exhaustive list, but I thought, boy, what was really missing in my mind was, student discipline, who's impacted, what works, what structures and approaches don't work. So I guess if that list were to be provided to the task force, I guess I would personally want that spelled out, because I would worry that they would start with that as a good starter list, and it would be a big omission in my mind, but because that's a key part of looking at racial equity in my view.
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah.
Yep, I think we can do that. Any other comments, suggestions?
I'm really glad you're putting this together now, Jennifer. I said to you when we had our private meeting that this is really exciting, and we've had such a year of of just being depressed about the state of the world, and this feels like a really great time for everybody to get excited about moving forward. And I hope we get a lot of interest in volunteers who want to take part in all the different groups and see how it plays out. So thank you so much to you and your whole team for putting this together and starting the ball rolling.
Yes, thank you. We're excited about it too.
Yeah, we've about lost a year here in just trying to keep up with all the COVID-related complications, and so a lot of progress in the district in all kinds of areas has been slowed down to a crawl or even just to a stop, and so it's good to see something moving forward.
I agree, John. I think we've spent so much time talking about getting students back in the building and how we're going to do this safely. And you guys don't realize the amount of meeting and amount of conversation that goes into what we presented tonight, just in those second semester and third quarter plans. But it involves a lot of organizing, a lot of talking, and you're right. I feel like we've spent so much of the last 4 or 5 months just talking about that, that we haven't been able to focus on anything else, and just, focusing on COVID, and we're ready to really talk about how what's going to happen when we get on the other side of COVID, because we can't wait until that happens to start having those conversations. So.
I'm happy that we're doing this in a thoughtful way too, and that we're not just under the pressure trying to just throw together some sort of, meaningless statement, but that we're actually really, looking at bringing people in to get opinions and to sit down and to look at a way for us to really tackle this issue, as opposed to just writing something up. And not that that's what everyone else is doing, but there's certainly not going to be a rush to just have some sort of statement to appease people, but an actual plan that we can put forth and measure and really work towards. So I'm really happy that it's happening this way, and that we weren't at a huge rush to try to just throw something out.
Absolutely, I agree, Tori. Thank you.
And to add on to what Tori just said, I mean, I think this was another thing that I remember we talked about, Jennifer, when we were in our group, our small group, was this is really, I think, going to help inform the strategic planning. And you had said, well, you were worried about, should we have started the strategic planning first? But no, I think this is better to do it first, because it's going to be overreaching to every aspect of how we plan the entire district. And so with what Tori was saying about making this really thoughtful and deep diving, it's going to be great timing for getting that. It's going to give us a lot more focus, I think, rather than doing it the other way around. Kind of feels backwards.
Mm-hmm.
I concur with everything said here. Equity needs to be the focus of everything we do. So doing this prior to strategic planning makes a ton of sense, and I'm very, very happy that the first pre-COVID big initiative we have is this. I think it's the right priority, the right time. So kudos to you and your staff for getting this rolling.
Oh.
I appreciate the fact that you've really stressed the role of student voice along the way too, because I think that's been missing sometimes in the past. The last time we had really strong students' voice was when we did do strategic planning about 6 or 7 years ago, I suppose now 5, whatever, and where the term personal greatness came from, which is student wording, and it's what we've lived by for the last 5 or 6 years. And so something equally challenging to all of us could come out of that.
Brenda, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, I agree. I just wanted to say, I appreciate you. I remember back in 2018 when we did come up with this, I appreciate you bringing that back into the forefront. Also, I had talked to Ann at a different time too. I think it would be good to get some board training. I know the Illinois State Board of Education has some new training units out about equity, and I would be interested in possibly getting some more training in that area.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Brenda, because as you mentioned at IESB this year, the Illinois Association of School Boards adopted the equity statement resolution. So you've all seen that. And Illinois State Board of Education just released their strategic plan, which was very equity focused too. So I think this work will, it kind of gives us that far-reaching, ISB, bigger view. But I think our work will fit right under that umbrella as well. So I'll share that with you guys if you haven't seen it. They literally just released it within the last week. So from ISB. So thoughts on what two of the three of you, and I guess that was my idea to kind of go with Ann and Paul and Tori. I don't know if the three of you guys want to talk or if we want to have that conversation here about who would like to kind of represent on the bigger group, since you guys are for sure our three returning board members. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'm happy to do it.
I am as well.
Okay.
I think it's important that whoever the two are be drawn from the three that are assured of being here past April.
Yep, I agree with that.
It'll be a good chance too for the veteran remaining board members to kind of help incoming board members kind of get their footing and understand their role in all of this not just as board members in general, but as part of this equity group. It'll be helpful for them to learn that as they go along. So
absolutely, because we'll still be having these conversations in April.
Yep.
So whoever is here, we know Peggy's not returning. Whoever might be here in Peggy's place, we could partner them. We can have two board members on a committee, so we could partner them, like you said, Ann, maybe on an action team group with the veteran person. So yeah, that's a great idea.
I'll go wherever you need me to.
I do appreciate the fact, though, that all 7 board members will be involved, because the topic is too important to simply leave it to 2 board members to report back to the other 5. That at the appropriate time, it's important for all 7 to be involved.
I agree with that. Okay, so with your permission, I guess I'm going to move forward, and the first task will be creating the survey that we send out to everybody to kind of have that open call for volunteers. I'll work with, I did a similar presentation with our administrators and shared some of these thoughts with our administrative cabinet group last week. So several of our administrators have already stepped up, Joe and others who are very interested in equity work and want to be part of the planning process as well as part of the facilitator process. So I'll kind of use them as my sounding board, and as well as, our UEA leadership and some of our other teacher leaders to kind of help us create a survey that we can get ready to send out here in the next couple weeks. Okay. All right.
Oops, getting my screen back here for my agenda. So we're finished with 10.0, and now we're on 11.0, a call for future special or executive meetings, which is what I was trying to look up, because I know that there was a meeting that was potentially being scheduled, but I don't know if we're going to have one in between now and our December 15th.
Yes, we're still working with our attorney to try to find a day. The first date we had didn't work out, so we're still working with our attorney to find an alternate date. So be on the lookout for more emails about that. So we will have an upcoming meeting, yes.
Okay. All righty. So moving on to the superintendent's report. You get no break tonight, Jennifer.
All right. I like this part. This is my favorite part. So I'm going to share. I remember to do it first this time. So the first thing I want to share, if any of you who are on social media, or I know several of our administrators have been sharing this out from CU Schools Foundation. They are in the middle of a Connections Fund virtual donation drive. So this information is also on our website. Our administrators have been sharing it around. So they're actually collecting donations to support students and families in our local communities. So if you would like more information about this, you can reach out to Cameron or myself, and we can share. Here are some of the places that you can go. So directly through the ROE, Amazon wish lists are available. You can make monetary donations on the CU Schools Foundation website, and you can also drop off donations at the CU Schools Foundation building there. At the ROE, rather, that's the ROE address. Oops, I lost my mouse here. There we go. And I don't know if you guys saw, we had some great PR and great input from families about the turkey giveaway before Thanksgiving. So we have a drive full of pictures that we've shared with people. Here are just a few. So again, I can't highlight enough our partners, Stone Creek Church, See You Better Together, Prairie Farms, you can see, let us use their refrigerated truck, and then Myers donated the $15 gift card. So we had 300 turkeys that we were able to give to USD 116 families because of our partnerships. So we're very thankful for that. It was something for us to be thankful for there before Thanksgiving. The students you see in the pictures are from Student Senate and the Rotary Interact Club. Many of our volunteers who came out. And Mouthwash, I enjoyed this. I hope most of you did, and I'm sure maybe a board member or two we're going to mention this. I hope I didn't steal your thunder, but this is a clip from our musical theater variety show that happened last Friday. It was great. I was so proud of the students. And kudos to Ms. Pavlakis and the team for really putting together a show. They did it in a very socially distanced, safe way. And it was just awesome. Just really, really proud of the students. So I don't know how many of you got to tune in, but my son and I watched it, and it was really exciting to see. We have the full performance too, so I'd be happy to share that out with people. We've also shared it on some of our social media platforms. So congratulations to the UHS Theater Department again for that. Something very different and unique, and it was a great success. I think she said they raised $1,700 or something like that in tickets and donations, that's just wonderful. And today is #Giving Tuesday. So happy Giving Tuesday Day. And I don't know if a lot of people know that you can still today make donations to USD 116 teachers through Donors Choose, and your donations will be matched because today is Giving Tuesday. So I know some of our teachers have been sharing that out today on social media and through, one of the teachers actually sent it to me as a Skyward kind of announcement, inviting parents to participate in Giving Tuesday. So I just wanted to share that. If you still have time tonight, you can go in and visit the Donors Choose and find a project that a USD 116 teacher is involved in and help get some new items in the hands of our students. So that is it for me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know for later this afternoon, I was checking on the Donors Choose, and at least one, when I last checked, was fully funded, which was really exciting, and some were getting real close. So I hope that people took advantage of that matching thing to serve it up. That was great. Okay, board reports.
Yeah, I have got one. First off, is the marching band show also on the website somewhere where people
yes,
can look
we
at it?
do have that video. I'll have to check and see where it is on the website. I'll send it to you, John. We do have a recording.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that a lot of people that weren't parents really would have liked to have been there to watch it. And so we have to watch it that way.
Okay.
So also just after much reflection and overwhelming support from Urbana parents, students, especially students, and staff from across the district, just wanted to let the board know that I've decided to run again for the school board. Much work has been done, more work is needed, and I believe I can contribute to meaningful progress over the next 2 years. So I just wanted to let the board members know that.
Oh, Brenda, you're muted.
Sorry. I attended the Illinois Association of School Boards virtual conference. That was very different, but they had some really good speakers there that were very inspiring. And I learned some new information that I could share with people if you were not able to go. A lot of the speakers' information, and that is on their website actually. And it was really good. I don't know what, I believe Tori went, and Ann, did you attend?
Any
Yeah.
other board? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Peggy.
I just want to add my support to the cabaret, the UHS theater department's performance on November 20th. It was very clever and creative in a way that you had to be during Zoom. So kudos to the directors, vocal and other director, and the crew and the performers. It was a very enjoyable evening. So glad they raised as much as they did. It's always hard to know when you're looking on Zoom.
Speaking of student performances, I might forget, or if it's already occurred, I saw on their Urbana Free Library newsletter that I think that members of the Urbana High School Chorus are going to be giving a performance, and it's on a Sunday, but I don't know which Sunday in December. And then I went to their website and I couldn't find any link to it just yet. So keep your eyes peeled on their the Free Library's website about this, because I think it's going to be a virtual performance, but it's going to be, you know, how they have those Sunday afternoon, they used to in-person Sunday afternoon performances from various musicians and people like that around the community. It's going to be one of those. So just keep your eyes peeled for an upcoming Sunday performance, and you can tune in, because I hope they sing some holiday themed stuff. Haven't been able to go to a concert all year, and I'm in desperate need of one from our kids.
I'll reach out to Miss Park and see if she can give me the information to make sure you guys get it.
Thank you. Yeah, because I mean, I don't know if it's the whole chorus, and it's probably several of the choruses together, just whoever wanted to volunteer to take part in it on that Sunday. So it's going to be a nice mix, but I know it's going to be a bunch of talented kids. So I'm excited.
I missed that. Thanks for sharing that.
I just, Peggy's comment about the Muthvash just jogged my memory, because of course I remember reading it like several days ago, and I thought, oh gosh, I've got to mention this, and I'm glad that it reminded me, or else it would have been gone into the ether. Any other board reports? No. Whoops. Hit the wrong button here. All right, I did mention earlier that we do have a special executive session after tonight's session. So what we're going to need is a motion from a board member to adjourn to closed session for the purpose of the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the district, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired, and the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Moved by John, seconded by Paul. Roll call, please.
Member Carter,
Yes.
Member Demmett,
Yes.
Member Patton,
Yes.
Member Pulaski,
Yes.
Member Fisher votes yes, Vice President Exum,
Yes.
and President Hall.
Okay, yes. Motion passes. We are now going to go into closed session, and I would also like to request just a couple-minute recess. I need to change rooms in my house. So I'll re-adjourn us in just a couple.
Okay, I'm gonna pause the recording here just for, or Kim, can you? I think you started it.